Have you ever stood in a place so quiet you could almost hear the past whispering to you? Imagine a landscape painted in shades of ochre and gold, where the sun beats down on an endless sea of sand. This is the coastal desert of northern Peru, a place of profound silence and hidden stories. Here, the wind is the only sculptor, tirelessly shaping and reshaping the dunes, creating a panorama that feels both ancient and alive. It's a land that seems empty at first glance, but if you listen closely, if you look beneath the surface, you'll find the ghosts of a civilization that thrived here long ago. This isn't just any desert. It's a vast, sandy library where history isn't written in books, but is buried beneath your feet. Millennia ago, this seemingly inhospitable terrain was the cradle of one of South America's most fascinating cultures. They built their world not with sprawling stone cities that defied time, but with adobe, with earth and water, creating pyramids that now blend back into the landscape, like sleeping giants covered in a blanket of sand. Standing airy, you can feel the weight of centuries, the rise and fall of empires that the modern world has all but forgotten. Let's travel back in time, to a period between 100 and 800 CE. Long before the famous Inca Empire, this region was dominated by a people known as the Moche. They were a complex society of farmers, fishermen, warriors, and artisans who mastered this challenging environment. They built incredible canal systems to irrigate the desert, turning arid valleys into green, fertile oases that sustained a large population. Their society was ruled by powerful lords and priests who presided over elaborate ceremonies in massive temples, known as huacas. These huacas, monumental adobe mounds, were the centers of Moche political and religious life. The Mocha world was vibrant and full of meaning. They didn't have a written language as we know it, no alphabet to record their history or beliefs. So how do we know so much about them? How can we piece together the story of their lives, their rituals, their gods, and their fears? The answer lies in the incredible legacy they left behind, a legacy not of words, but of images crafted with astonishing skill and detail. Their stories were told through art, and their primary medium was clay. The Moche were master potters. In their hands, simple clay was transformed into a vivid chronicle of their existence. It's almost as if they knew that one day, long after their language had faded and their temples had crumbled, these ceramic vessels would speak for them. They created hundreds of thousands of pieces of pottery, each one a small window into their world. From everyday life to complex mythology, from portraits of individuals to depictions of grand ceremonies, their pottery is a visual encyclopedia of a lost civilization. And it's this pottery that we're going to explore. But to truly understand its significance, we first have to appreciate the world it came from. The Moche were deeply connected to their environment. The desert, the ocean, the mountains. These weren't just backdrops. They were active participants in their lives and their cosmology. The Pacific Ocean provided them with a rich bounty of fish and marine life, which feature heavily in their art. The Andes Mountains, looming in the distance, were the source of water and the dwelling place of powerful deities. And the desert itself, with its cycles of drought and flood, shaped their understanding of life, death, and rebirth. This interplay between culture and nature is key to understanding the Moche. Their worldview was they saw patterns in the seasons, in the stars, and in the lives of the creatures around them. They believed in a world animated by spirits, where animals and humans could transform into one another, and where the lines between the natural and supernatural were blurred. Their art is filled with hybrid creatures, part human, part animal, that represent the complex forces they believed governed the universe. As we delve deeper into the world of the Moche, we're going to uncover some of their most iconic creations. We'll look at their famous portrait vessels, so realistic that they feel like you're meeting someone from 1500 years ago. These aren't just generic faces. They are individuals, each with a unique expression, hairstyle, and even what appear to be scars or distinct facial features. Who were these people? Were they powerful rulers, respected elders, or perhaps even prisoners of war? Each vessel poses a question, inviting us to imagine the life of the person it portrays. Then there are the narrative scenes, the so-called fine-line drawings that wrap around their ceramic vessels. These are like comic strips from the ancient world, depicting everything from deer hunts and ceremonial combat to complex mythological scenes involving gods and demons. Archaeologists have spent decades decoding these intricate narratives, piecing together the puzzle of Moche mythology and ritual practice. We'll explore some of these famous scenes, like the sacrifice ceremony or the revolt of the objects, and see how they provide invaluable insights into the Moche belief system. But the story of the Moche isn't just one of artistic brilliance and cultural complexity. It's also a story of power, warfare, and ritual sacrifice. Their art doesn't shy away from the harsher realities of life. It depicts warriors in elaborate regalia, scenes of combat, and the capture and sacrifice of prisoners. These were not just symbolic acts. Archaeological discoveries, like the tombs of the Lords of Sipán, have confirmed the reality of these rituals, revealing skeletons of sacrificed individuals alongside the richly adorned burials of Moche elite. So, this quiet desert is not so quiet after all. It's a stage where a dramatic and fascinating story unfolded. The wind that blows across these dunes carries with it the echoes of a people who faced the challenges of their environment with ingenuity and creativity, who built a complex society, and who left behind an artistic legacy that continues to captivate and mystify us today. In T.I. Sirius, we will become archaeologists of art, digging through layers of symbolism and meaning to bring the Moche world back to life. We'll see how their pottery was more than just decorative. It was a tool for communication, a repository of knowledge, and a way of making sense of their place in the cosmos. Join me as we journey into the heart of this ancient Peruvian culture, and let the stories sleeping beneath the sand awaken. Thank you for watching, and if you're as fascinated by the ancient world as I am, be sure to subscribe for the next chapter of our journey. Welcome back to our journey through ancient civilizations. Today, we re-diving deep into the sands of time to uncover a culture that thrived long before the Inca. A people known for their incredible art, complex society, and mysterious disappearance. The Moche. So, who were the Moche? Imagine a narrow strip of desert coastline in northern Peru, squeezed between the vast Pacific Ocean and the towering Andes Mountains. This was their home, a challenging environment they not only survived but mastered. From around 100 to 800 AD, the Moche civilization flourished here, creating a series of independent yet interconnected states. They didn't have a single, unified empire like the Romans. Instead, their world was centered around several major river valleys that cut through the desert, bringing life-giving water down from the mountains. The most prominent of these were the Moche Valley, where you can still find their monumental capital, and the nearby Chicama and Lambiek valleys to the north. Each valley was likely its own political entity, with its own rulers and ceremonial centers, all sharing a common Moche culture. One of the most fascinating things about the Moche is that they left behind no written language. So how do we know so much about them? The answer lies in the dirt, in the tombs, and most spectacularly, in their art. Archaeologists are like detectives of the past, and for them, the Moche left a treasure trove of clues. Their primary method has been excavation, carefully uncovering the remnants of cities, pyramids, and graves. By studying the layers of soil, the architecture, and the objects found within, they can piece together a timeline and understand how Moche society evolved. They analyze skeletal remains to learn about the people's health, diet, and even causes of death. And they study the distribution of pottery styles and building techniques to map out the extent of Moche influence and the relationships between different valleys. But perhaps the most revealing evidence comes from their incredible ceramics. The Moche were master potters, and their vessels are like history books without words. They didn't just make simple pots. They created stunningly realistic portraits of individuals, detailed scenes of daily life, complex rituals, and epic myths. These ceramics show us what they looked like, what they wore, the animals they hunted, the crops they grew, and the gods they worshipped. It's through this visual library that we've been able to reconstruct their world. Without a single written word, the Moche told us their story through art, a silent testimony that archaeologists have been learning to read for over a century. So let's step into that world. What was Moche society actually like? It was highly structured, a pyramid of power. At the very top were the elite rulers, powerful lords and priests who were seen as intermediaries between the human and divine worlds. They lived in luxury, surrounded by immense wealth, and were buried in spectacular tombs filled with gold, silver, and precious stones. We know this from discoveries like the tomb of the Lord of Sipán, one of the most incredible archaeological finds of the 20th century. This ruler was buried with retainers, guardians, and a staggering amount of ornate jewelry and ceremonial gear, showcasing his immense power even in death. Below these divine rulers were other nobles, administrators, and high-ranking warriors who helped manage the state and lead armies. Then came the skilled artisans, the potters, weavers, and metallurgists, who created the magnificent objects that defined Moche culture. Their skill was so valued that they held a respected position in society. The vast majority of the Moche people, however, formed the base of this social pyramid. They were the farmers, fishermen, and laborers. Their hard work was the engine that powered the entire civilization, building the monuments and feeding the population. This rigid hierarchy is visible everywhere, from the size and location of their homes to the way they were buried. An elite lord, Esperiel, was worlds apart from a common farmer ese simple grabe. How did a civilization thrive in one of the driest deserts on Earth? The Moche were brilliant engineers. Their secret weapon was irrigation. They constructed a vast and sophisticated network of canals, some of which are still in use today. These canals diverted water from the rivers and channeled it across the desert floor, transforming barren sand into fertile agricultural fields. This engineering marvel allowed them to grow a surplus of food, including maize, beans, squash, and peanuts. This food surplus was the foundation of their society. It supported a large population, freed up people to become specialized artisans and warriors, and allowed the elite to accumulate wealth and power. In essence, the Moche didn't just live in the desert. They terraformed it to suit their needs. At the heart of Moche life were their ceremonial centers. These were not just cities in the modern sense, but sprawling complexes dominated by massive adobe brick pyramids known as huacas. The two most famous are in the Moche Valley itself: the Huaca del Sol, or Pyramid of the Sun, and the Huaca de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Moon. The Huaca del Sol was once the largest adobe structure in the Americas, a colossal monument that would have served as the administrative and political heart of the state. It was a symbol of the ruler's power over the physical world. Just a short distance away, the Huaca de la Luna served a different, more sacred purpose. It was a religious center, a place of worship and ritual. Its walls were covered in vibrant, multicolored murals depicting their gods, especially the fierce, fanged deity known as Aeopec, or the Decapitator. Excavations here have revealed evidence of elaborate ceremonies, including human sacrifice. These rituals were likely tied to their cosmology and the need to appease the gods to ensure the continued fertility of the land and the success of their society. These huacas were the stage upon which the drama of Moche, power, religion, and life played out. They were the physical and spiritual anchors of their world. So, to recap, the Moche were a complex and sophisticated people who built a civilization in the harsh deserts of northern Peru. They were organized into valley-based states, ruled by a powerful elite, and supported by ingenious irrigation farming. Without a written language, they chronicled their existence through breathtaking art, leaving behind a legacy that continues to fascinate us. Their story is a powerful reminder of human ingenuity and the incredible cultures that can rise and fall, leaving only whispers in the sand. In our next chapter, we'll take a closer look at the Moche's art and iconography, decoding the stories they told on their pottery and temple walls. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying this journey into the past, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. See you then. Welcome back to our journey through ancient wonders. Today, we venture into the heart of the Moche Valley in northern Peru, a stark and beautiful desert landscape that cradles one of South America's most fascinating civilizations. Imagine standing here nearly 2,000 years ago, gazing out at a site that would dominate the horizon. Two colossal structures, not of stone, but of sun-dried earth, rising like man-made mountains from the flat, arid plains. These are the Huaca del Sol and the Huaca de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, the twin hearts of the Moche world. Let's start with the larger of the two, the Huaca del Sol. This was a truly staggering achievement of engineering and human effort. Picture a pyramid stretching over 1,000 feet long and towering more than 130 feet high. It's estimated that it took over 140 million adobe bricks to construct this behemoth. Think about that for a moment. Each brick was made by hand, formed from wood and water, mixed with sand and straw, and left to bake in the relentless Peruvian sun. What's even more incredible is that many of these bricks bear what archaeologists call maker-s marks. These were symbols representing different communities or labor groups. This tells us the pyramid wasn't built by a slave class, but was likely a collaborative, community-wide project, a form of taxation or tribute paid through labor. The entire community contributed to building this monument for their rulers and their gods. The Huaca del Sol seems to have been the administrative and residential center of the Moche capital. It was a palace, a fortress, and a symbol of political power, the place where the Moche elite lived, governed, and oversaw the daily life of their sprawling city. Now, let's turn our attention across the 500-meter-wide plaza to its celestial partner, the Huaca de la Luna. While the Pyramid of the Sun was about worldly power, the Pyramid of the Moon was the soul of the Moche's spiritual world. It's smaller, but in many ways, far more intricate and revealing. Unlike its sun-baked neighbor, much of the Huaca de la Luna has been excavated, and what is revealed has completely rewritten our understanding of the Moche. It wasn't built all at once. Instead, it was constructed in phases over centuries. When a new temple was needed, the Moche didn't tear the old one down. They would ritually entomb it, carefully filling in the old rooms and courts with new adobe bricks, and then build a bigger, grander temple directly on top. This process created a layered pyramid, a time capsule, preserving some of the most vibrant and astonishing art of the ancient Americas. As archaeologists peel back these layers, it's like opening a series of nested Russian dolls. Each layer reveals courtyards, rooms, and ceremonial platforms covered in breathtaking murals. The colors red, yellow, black, white, and a brilliant sky. Blue are still shockingly vivid after more than a millennium, and the images they depict are a direct window into the Moche cosmos. This is where we truly meet their gods and understand their beliefs. The most prominent figure you'll see is a fanged deity, often with octopus-like tentacles or feline features. This is Apek, the decapitator god. He's a fierce, powerful being, the creator god who also oversaw agriculture and presided over ritual sacrifice. His face stares out from countless walls, a constant reminder of the raw, untamable forces of nature that the Moche both respected and feared. Let's walk through one of these ceremonial plazas. The walls around us are alive with a complex tapestry of figures. We see warriors in elaborate bird costumes, priests holding ceremonial knives, and processions of bound prisoners. There are geometric patterns representing waves and mountains. There are stylized depictions of spiders, snakes, and condorzal, powerful animals in the Moche symbolic universe. One of the most famous murals is the Rebellion of the Objects, a surreal scene where everyday items like war clubs, shields, and helmets magically come to life, sprouting arms and legs to capture their former human masters. It's a chaotic, almost nightmarish scene that scholars believe might represent the world turned upside down, a metaphor for cosmic disorder, or perhaps a myth about the end of a previous age. These murals weren't just decoration. They were sacred texts, a visual language that communicated the core tenets of Moche religion to a society that was likely largely illiterate. They told the stories of creation, the deeds of the gods, and the necessary rituals to keep the world in balance. And that brings us to the darker side of Moche ritual life. Within the highest platforms of the Huaca de la Luna, archaeologists made a chilling discovery. The remains of dozens of individuals, mostly young men. Their bones showed signs of brutal combat and ritual execution. This was the final, terrifying stage of a ceremony depicted on Moche pottery and murals. It seems that elite warriors would engage in ritual combat. The losers were not killed on the battlefield, but were stripped, paraded through the plazas, and brought to the summit of the pyramid. There, before the fanged eyes of Apek, their throats were cut, and their blood was collected in goblets to be offered to the gods, likely by the highest-ranking priests, or even the ruler himself. This wasn't senseless violence. To the Moche, It was a vital transaction. They believed that human sacrifice was necessary to appease the gods and ensure the continuation of life. In their world, where devastating El Niño floods and crippling droughts were a constant threat, these offerings were seen as a way to restore cosmic balance and guarantee fertile fields and full fishing nets. The Huaca de la Luna was the stage for this ultimate sacred drama. Between the two great pyramids, the vast plaza was once the site of a bustling city. Archaeologists have found workshops for pottery, metalworking, and weaving. The Moche were master artisans. Their ceramic artists created incredibly realistic portrait vessels, stirrup spout pots, sculpted into the faces of actual individuals, showing a level of realism unmatched in the ancient Americas. You can see nobles, warriors, priests, even individuals with diseases or deformities, each one a unique personality frozen in clay. Their metalworkers were masters of gold, silver, and copper, creating intricate jewelry, masks, and ritual objects, using advanced techniques like gilding and soldering. This urban center, nestled between the seats of political and religious power, was where the genius of Moche artistry came to life. The city was a living, breathing organism, fueled by the faith centered on the pyramids and the power emanating from them. So what happened to this vibrant, complex, and sometimes brutal world? Around the 8th century AD, the Mocha civilization began to decline. Evidence points to a megalo Niño eventa, period of extreme climate instability that brought catastrophic flooding, followed by decades of intense drought. The foundations of the adobe pyramids were washed away by torrential rains, and the irrigation canals that sustained their agriculture were buried in sand. For a people whose religion was based on securing nature's favor, this must have felt like a complete betrayal by the gods. The rituals at the Huaca de la Luna were no longer working. The sacrifices were not enough. This crisis of faith likely led to political upheaval and internal conflict, causing the Mocha state to fracture in its great capital city, to be abandoned to the desert winds. Today, standing in the shadow of these weathered giants, you can feel the immense weight of that history. The Huaca del Sol, largely unexcavated, remains a sleeping giant, holding its secret site. The Huaca de la Luna, with its revealed murals and sacrificial platforms, speaks to us more directly, telling a story of incredible creativity, profound faith, and the eternal human struggle to find order in a chaotic world. They are a powerful testament to a civilization that, for 1,000 years, transformed the desert into a stage for gods and kings. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of the Moche pyramids. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, please give this video a like. And do you forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you do miss our next adventure into the past. See you next time. Imagine a civilization so advanced they built massive pyramids, engineered complex irrigation systems, and created some of the most stunning art in the ancient world. Now, imagine they did all this without leaving behind a single word of written text. No diaries, no histories, no grocery lists. How could we possibly know anything about them? Well, this isn't a hypothetical. This is the story of the Moche people, who thrived on the northern coast of Peru from about 100 to 800 AD. So, how do we read the story of a culture that didn't write? We look at their pottery. Welcome back to our series on the incredible Moche civilization. In our last chapter, we explored their monumental architecture. Today, we're diving into Chapter 4, Ceramics as a Window into Their Soul. For archaeologists, Moche pottery isn't just a collection of old pots. It's their library, their encyclopedia, their history books, all rolled into one. These ceramic vessels are the texts that tell us who the Moche were, how they lived, and what they believed. Each piece is a page, and every scene painted or sculpted on it is a sentence, rich with meaning. Let's start with the most famous type, the portrait head vessels. These aren't just generic faces. They are strikingly realistic, capturing the unique features of specific individuals. You can see wrinkles, scars, distinct hairstyles, and expressions ranging from stern and powerful to serene and thoughtful. Archaeologists believe these were portraits of real people, likely powerful rulers, warriors, or priests. It's like looking at a photo album from 2,000 years ago. We might not know their names, but we can see their faces. We can connect with them on a human level, seeing the dignity, the authority, and the personality they possessed. These portraits give us a direct, personal link to the Moche elite. They weren't abstract concepts. They were real people who lived, ruled, and were immortalized in clay. But the Moche didn't just document their leaders. Their pottery gives us an unparalleled look into the daily lives of everyone. We see scenes of fishing, with men in red boats wrestling with nets full of fish. We see farmers tending to their crops of maize, beans, and squash, the very foundations of their society. There are women weaving intricate textiles, a skill highly prized by the Moche. We see mothers nursing their children, and musicians playing pipes and drums. It's a vibrant, living world. These everyday scenes are incredibly valuable because they show us the mundane, the routine, the very fabric of Moche society. It's not just about kings and gods. It's about the ordinary people who made the civilization run. Through these pots, we can almost hear the sounds and smell the sense of a Mocha village. Of course, life wasn't always peaceful. Moche pottery is also famous for its graphic depictions of warfare and ritual. We see warriors in full regalia, complete with ornate helmets and powerful clubs. The scenes of combat are dynamic and often brutal. They saw one-on-one battles, the taking of prisoners, and the aftermath of conflict. But this wasn't just about territorial conquest. Many of these scenes are highly rich. We see victorious warriors presenting captured prisoners to a high-ranking figure, often depicted as a powerful lord or a deity. This leads to one of the most talked-about aspects of Moche culture: the sacrifice ceremony. Pottery sequences meticulously illustrate this ritual. A prisoner is stripped of his armor, his throat is cut, and his blood is collected in a goblet. This goblet is then presented to a central figure, often called the warrior priest or Aiopek, the decapitator god, who is sometimes part human, part jaguar. These weren't just stories. Archaeological discoveries have confirmed these rituals. At sites like the Huaca de la Luna, skeletal remains have been found that show evidence of the exact kind of ritual killing depicted on the pots. The pottery acted as a script, and the Moche acted it out. It tells us that for them, warfare and sacrifice were deeply intertwined with their religious and cosmic beliefs, likely seen as necessary to ensure agricultural fertility and maintain the balance of the world. And this brings us to their complex spiritual world. The Moche pantheon was filled with fascinating supernatural beings. Aiopek, the decapitator god, is one of the most prominent. He's often shown with fangs, a snarling expression, and sometimes with spider-like attributes. He's a creator and a destroyer, a figure of immense power. But he's not alone. There are bird-headed figures, sea monsters, and anthropomorphic creatures of all kinds. The pottery shows these deities interacting with humans, engaging in mythical battles, and receiving offerings. It's our primary source for understanding Moche religion. We see their creation myths, their beliefs about the underworld, and the sacred animals they revered, like the jaguar, the owl, and the snake. The supernatural was woven into every aspect of their existence, and their pottery was the medium through which they expressed this profound connection to the cosmos. Beyond the grand themes of life, death, and divinity, the pottery also reveals the Moche's understanding of health and the body. We find an amazing category of ceramics that depict various diseases and medical conditions. There are pots showing individuals with visible tumors, limb amputations, and congenital disorders. But most famous are the depictions of healers, or curanderos. We see them with their patients, often performing rituals that might involve blowing smoke or using sacred plants. These vessels are a testament to their sophisticated observational skills. They recognize different ailments and had specific people and practices dedicated to healing. It's an ancient medical textbook made of clay, showing us that they were not just warriors and farmers, but also keen observers of the human condition, grappling with the same struggles of sickness and health that we do today. The Moche were also incredibly open in their art. Their ceramics include a wide range of explicit depictions of sexuality. These are not hidden or abstract. They are direct and detailed. We see a variety of acts, some of which appear to be ceremonial or symbolic rather than purely procreative. For a long time, these pots were hidden away in the back rooms of museums, considered too shocking for public display. But today, scholars understand that they hold important clues. They might be linked to fertility rituals, celebrating the life-giving forces of nature. Or they could be a form of symbolic expression, using sexuality to represent concepts of power, dominance, or the union of opposites, like life and death. While we may not fully understand their exact meaning, they show us a culture that had a very different and far more open approach to the human body and its functions than many later societies. So, how did they make these incredible storytelling vessels? The Moche were master artisans. They typically used molds to create the basic shape of the pot, which allowed for mass production of certain forms. But the real magic was in the details. After the basic form was made, artists would add the fine, individual features by hand, sculpting the faces, incising the patterns, and attaching the spouts. The most common form is the stirrup spout vessel, a uniquely Andean invention with a handle shaped like a stirrup and a single spout. This shape provided a large, continuous surface for decoration. The pots were then painted with a mineral slip, typically in red, brown, or cream colors, before being fired. The result is a work of art that is both durable and incredibly expressive. The consistency in their style and iconography across hundreds of miles and hundreds of years shows a shared cultural identity, a common language of symbols that everyone understood. When we look at a Moche pot, we are not just looking at an object. We are reading a message from the past. We are piecing together a lost narrative, one vessel at a time. The scenes of daily life, the portraits of leaders, the myths of gods, the drama of war, the intimacy of healing, it's all there, preserved in fired clay. The Moche left us no words, but they gave us something just as powerful, a visual library of their entire world. Their pottery is a testament to their artistry, their intellect, and their humanity. It's a window directly into their soul. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of Moche ceramics. In our next and final chapter, we'll discuss the mysterious collapse of this magnificent civilization and explore its enduring legacy. Make sure you resubscribed so you don't miss it. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the wonders of ancient civilizations. Today, we're diving into Chapter 5, exploring a truly unique art form that brings the past to life like never before, the portrait pottery of the Moche people. Imagine holding a piece of pottery that isn't just a container, but a face from over 1,500 years ago, staring back at you with an incredible sense of realism. This is the legacy of the Moche, a civilization that flourished on the northern coast of Peru from about 200 to 850 AD. Among all their remarkable achievements, it's their portrait vessels that truly stand out. Historians and art critics agree. The Moche created the most realistic and expressive pottery portraits in the entire ancient world. Nothing else from antiquity even comes close. So, what exactly are these portrait vessels? They are ceramic bottles, often stirrup spout vessels, where the main body of the pot is sculpted into a human head. But these aren't generic, idealized faces. Each one is a distinct individual. We see old men with wrinkled brows and sunken cheeks, proud warriors with elaborate headdresses and face paint, and young individuals whose expressions seem to capture a fleeting moment in time. Some look stern and powerful, others seem thoughtful, and a few even appear to be smiling or caught in mid. The level of detail is simply astonishing. The artists captured the unique curve of a nose, the specific shape of the eyes, the subtle lines around the mouth, and even physical conditions like scars, blindness in one eye, or facial paralysis. This wasn't just art. It was a form of documentation, a way of preserving the identities of real people. It's like having a three-dimensional photo album of an ancient society. How did these incredible artifacts survive for us to see? Most of them were discovered in the graves of the Moche elite. They were burial goods, intended to accompany the deceased into the afterlife. These tombs, located in the arid coastal desert of Peru, provided the perfect conditions for preserving the delicate ceramics. Over the decades, archaeologists have carefully excavated these sites, unearthing thousands of these portrait heads. Unfortunately, Many have also been found by looters, which means we've lost the valuable context of where and with whom they were buried. But even without their original context, the vessels themselves tell a powerful story. When you look at a collection of them, you're not just seeing art objects. You're meeting the Moche people. You see a diverse population of individuals. This realism is what makes them so profoundly moving. Unlike the stylized portraits of the Egyptians or the idealized sculptures of the Greeks and Romans, the Moche chose to represent people as they actually were, with all their unique features and imperfections. Why did they do this? Why this obsession with individual likeness? This is one of the great mysteries of the Moche. One prominent theory is that these portraits depict important individuals within their society. Rulers, priests, warriors, and other members of the elite. The vessels might have served as a way to honor these figures, to commemorate their lives, and to maintain their presence and authority even after death. Think about it. In a society without a written language, these portraits could have functioned as a historical record. If you wanted to remember what a great leader looked like, you could look at his portrait vessel. These pots could have been used in rituals, passed down through generations, and displayed to remind people of their lineage and history. Another fascinating aspect is the use of molds. The Moche were master ceramicists, and they developed sophisticated techniques. They would first create a master head from clay, capturing every intricate detail. From this original sculpture, they would create a two-piece mold. This allowed them to produce multiple copies of the same portrait. However, they didn't just mass-produce identical heads. After a head was pressed from a mold, an artist would add unique details by hand. They would change the headdress, alter the face paint, or modify the expression slightly. So, you might find several portraits that clearly depict the same person, but each one is a unique work of art. This mold technology suggests that certain individuals were particularly important. Why make dozens of portraits of the same person? Perhaps it was a way to distribute the image of a powerful ruler across his territory. A bit like how Roman emperors put their faces on coins to spread their image throughout the empire. Seeing the face of your leader on a vessel used in daily life or in important ceremonies would be a constant reminder of his power and presence. Let's talk about some specific examples that really highlight their genius. There's one famous vessel known as the cut lip portrait. It depicts a man with a distinctively cleft or hair lip. The artists didn't shy away from this detail. They rendered it with clinical accuracy. This tells us that the Moche valued realism over idealized beauty. This person was important enough to be immortalized in ceramic, and his physical condition was an integral part of his identity. Another set of portraits shows a powerful-looking man with one blind eye. We see him at different stages of his life, from a younger man to an older one, his face growing more lined with age. Seeing this progression across multiple vessels is like watching a person's life unfold. It connects us to him on a deeply human level. It's a powerful reminder that these were real people, with real stories and real lives. The expressions are another key element. We see portraits of individuals with their faces contorted in what appears to be pain or ecstasy, perhaps depicting shamans in a trance state. Others have serene, almost meditative expressions. Some look directly at the viewer with an engaging, confident gaze. This emotional range is unparalleled in the ancient world. The Moche weren't just capturing a physical likeness, they were capturing personality and emotion. They were masters of psychological portraiture, centuries before the concept was even named. So, as we wrap up our look at these incredible artifacts, what's the main takeaway? The Moche portrait vessels are a unique window into the past. They challenge our preconceptions about ancient art and ancient people. They show us a society that valued individualism and realism, a people who wanted to remember and be remembered not as abstract symbols, but as the distinct, living, breathing individuals they were. These clay faces have survived for over 1,000 years, carrying the stories and identities of a lost civilization. They are a testament to the Moche's artistic skill and their profound understanding of what it means to be human. They remind us that across time and culture, the desire to capture a face, a personality, and a legacy is a universal human impulse. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the world of the Moche. It's truly one of the most fascinating subjects in ancient art. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to explore together. See you in the next video. Welcome back to our journey into the world of the Moche civilization. In this chapter, we're going to delve deep into a question that has fascinated archaeologists and art lovers for decades. How did Moche artists achieve such breathtaking realism in their ceramics? It's one thing to say their pottery looks lifelike, but it's another to understand the sheer skill, observation, and technical mastery that made it possible. This wasn't just art. It was a conversation with reality, captured in clay. Let's begin with the most iconic form, the stirrup spout vessel. You've seen them in museums and photographs, a rounded chamber with a handle shaped like a stirrup and a single spout. This design is ancient, dating back long before the Moche. But in their hands, it became the ultimate canvas. The closed, rounded body of the vessel was the perfect three-dimensional space to sculpt a human head, an animal, or even a full narrative scene. The stirrup handle and spout were functional, allowing the vessel to be filled and poured, but they also served to frame the artwork, drawing the eye directly to the sculpted subject. Think of it as a pedestal and a frame, all built into one elegant, unified design. This form wasn't just a container for liquids. It was a container for a story, a personality, a moment frozen in time. So, how did they create so many of these intricate pieces? The secret lies in a revolutionary technology for their time: mold making. While a master artist would hand sculpt the original prototype, or matrix, with incredible detail, this initial piece would then be used to create a two-part press mold. Clay would be pressed into each half of the mold, and once it was firm enough, the two halves would be joined together. You can often see a faint vertical seam line on Moche portrait heads. If you look closely, a telltale sign of this process. Once the basic form was cast, the stirrup spout, which was made separately, would be attached. This mold technology was a game-changer. It allowed for the mass production of ceramic vessels, enabling the Moche to share their stories, beliefs, and social structures on a massive scale. It meant that a particularly powerful portrait or a significant mythological scene could be replicated and distributed throughout their territory. But don't mistake this for simple mass production. The process didn't end when the piece came out of the mold. In fact, that's where the true artistry often began. After a vessel was assembled, it was handed over to artisans who would add the fine, individualizing details. This is what separates a good Moche pot from a masterpiece. Using sharp tools, they would redefine and sharpen the features that might have been softened in the molding process. They would incise delicate lines to represent wrinkles around the eyes, the curve of a lip, or the texture of hair. They would carefully carve out the nostrils and ears, giving the face depth and breadth. This post-mold customization ensured that even if two vessels came from the same mold, they could be finished as unique individuals. One might be given a specific scar, another a particular headdress, or a unique pattern of face paint. It was a perfect blend of efficiency and artistry, and the level of detail is just astounding. Moche artists were master observers of the human face. They weren't interested in creating idealized, godlike beings. They were interested in people. Real people. You see it in the way they captured age. There are portraits of youthful warriors with smooth skin and a confident gaze. Then there are portraits of elders. Their faces a roadmap of a long life. The skin sags, realistically. Deep lines are etched into the forehead and cheeks, and the eyes might hold a look of weary wisdom. They captured the subtle hollowing of the cheeks and the way the flesh settles as one ages. This wasn't a caricature of old age. It was a respectful and accurate representation of the human life cycle. They were also masters of emotion. While many Moche portraits have a serene, neutral expression, others are incredibly emotional. You can find faces contorted in pain, grimacing in effort, or showing a subtle, knowing smile. They understood that emotion is conveyed not just in the mouth, but in the entire face. A slight furrow of the brow, a tensing of the cheek muscles, a widening of the eyes-all. These minute details were observed and translated into clay. Looking at these pots, you feel a direct connection to a person who lived and felt things over 1,500 years ago. It's an incredibly powerful experience. Their commitment to realism extended to depicting the full spectrum of human experience. This included scars, diseases, and physical disabilities. We see portraits of individuals with battle scars, like a healed gash across the cheek or a missing eye. These weren't seen as imperfections to be hidden, but as markers of identity, of a life lived. They sculpted individuals with cleft lips, Bell's palsy, and other congenital conditions with the same care and dignity as they did their rulers and warriors. This has given researchers an invaluable window into the health and daily life of the Moche people. It shows an acceptance and a focus on reality, warts and all, that is radically different from many other ancient cultures that preferred to depict only idealized perfection. Finally, let's talk about color and firing. The Moche palette was typically limited, primarily using red and cream-colored slips of liquid clay mixture applied to the surface before firing. But they used this limited palette with incredible skill. The slip was painted on to depict face paint, tattoos, textiles, and details of clothing. The precise, clean lines of their painting show immense control and a steady hand. The firing process itself was the final, crucial step. Moche potters had to carefully control the temperature and oxygen levels. In their kilns, most of their pottery was fired in an oxidizing atmosphere, which is what produces the characteristic red and cream colors. However, they also mastered reduction firing, where the oxygen supply is cut off. This process creates a smoky, black, and often polished finish. This technique was often used for vessels depicting the underworld or nocturnal animals, the black color adding to the symbolic meaning. Getting this right was a science. Too hot, and the pot could crack. Too cool, and it wouldn't be durable. The consistent quality of their surviving ceramics is a testament to their deep knowledge of pyrotechnology. So, when we look at a Moche portrait head, we're not just looking at a pot. We are looking at the culmination of a sophisticated artistic and technical process. It starts with the elegant and functional design of the stirrup spout. Vessel. It moves to the innovative use of molds for replication, followed by the meticulous individual hand finishing that gives each piece its soul. It's built on a foundation of profound observation of age, of emotion, of the very marks that life leaves on a human face. And it's all brought to completion through a masterful control of pigments and fire. The Moche didn't just want to show what a person looked like. They wanted to capture their presence, their essence, their very humanity. They succeeded so brilliantly that today, centuries later, we can still look into the clay eyes of their people and feel like we almost know them. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into Moche techniques. I hope it gives you a new appreciation for these incredible artists. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because in our next chapter, we'll be exploring the gods, myths, and rituals that are so vividly depicted in their work. We'll see you then. Have you ever looked at a really old piece of art, like a statue or a painting from thousands of years ago, and wondered, who was that person? Where te real? What was their life like? It's a natural curiosity. But for a long time, historians and archaeologists thought that most ancient portraits were just generic representations, not depictions of actual, living, breathing people. They were symbols of a king, a god, or a warrior, but not asterisk. A specific asterisk. King or warrior. Well, today, we're going to blow that idea wide open by looking at one of the most incredible collections of realistic portraits ever created. The portrait vessels of the Moche civilization. The Moche people thrived on the northern coast of Peru from about 100 to 800 AD. They were master engineers, building vast irrigation canals in the desert. They were incredible artists, known for their elaborate metalwork and stunning textiles. But what they re? Most famous for are their ceramics. The Moche created hundreds of thousands of ceramic vessels, many of which are shaped like people, animals, and scenes from their daily and ritual lives. Among these, the most captivating are the portrait vessels. These aren't just generic faces. They are so realistic, so detailed, that you feel like you could recognize these people if you saw them on the street today. We see every wrinkle, every scar, every unique facial feature. They show a huge range of emotions, from stern and powerful to serene and even playful. For decades, the common belief was that even these hyper-realistic Moche portraits were just idealized types. Maybe this one represents a warrior, and that one represents a priest. But a revolutionary study changed everything. Researchers, led by Christopher Donen at UCLA, began a massive project. They photographed thousands of Moche portrait vessels from museums all over the world. Then, they started the painstaking process of comparing them, not just by looking at general features, but by treating it like a police investigation. They looked for unique, identifying marks: a specific scar over an eye, a uniquely shaped earlobe, a particular pattern of wrinkles, or a distinctive mole. They were looking for facial signatures, the little things that make your face asterisk. Your asterisk face. What they found was astonishing. The same individuals appeared again and again, on different vessels, sometimes made years or even decades apart. It was like finding ancient photo albums. This wasn't a generic warrior type. This was a specific person, a real man who lived and aged in the Moche world. Suddenly, these ceramic heads weren't just art objects. They were historical documents. They were portraits of real people. The researchers were able to identify dozens of these recurring individuals. They gave them nicknames to keep track of them, like bigot, which means mustache in Spanish, for a man with a prominent mustache, or cut lip, for an individual with a noticeable scar on his lip. This discovery opens up a whole new window into Moche society. If these are real people, then who were they? The level of detail and the sheer number of portraits made of certain individuals suggest they were incredibly important. These were the celebrities, the powerful figures of their time. They were likely nobles, influential rulers, and priests who held immense spiritual authority. We see some of them as young men, full of strength, and then again as older, more weathered figures, perhaps showing their journey through life and their accumulation of wisdom and power. Some are depicted in elaborate headdresses and ear spools, markers of high status. Others are shown as fierce warriors, sometimes holding weapons or captured enemies. This tells us that military prowess was highly valued, and that specific, successful warriors were celebrated and immortalized in clay. Let's take a closer look at one of these individuals. Researchers identified a man they called Long Nose. His portrait appears on numerous vessels. In some, he's depicted wearing the regalia of a warrior. In others, he appears in ritual scenes, suggesting he might have also held a priestly role. We see him age over time. In earlier vessels, his face is smoother, more youthful. In laterones, wrinkles line his eyes and forehead. This isn't just an artist's convention for old men. The specific patterns of the wrinkles are consistent across different parts, showing a true-to-life aging process. Seeing Long Nose's life story unfold across these ceramic canvases is incredibly powerful. It collapses time and connects us directly to this person from nearly 2,000 years ago. He wasn't just a symbol. He was a man who held power, who fought, who aged, and whose face was so important that artists were commissioned to capture his likeness again and again. Another fascinating aspect is what these portraits tell us about Moche beliefs. Some individuals are depicted with features that suggest they were seen as having a connection to the supernatural world. For example, some portraits show one eye as a normal human eye, and the other as the eye of a bird of prey or a jaguar. This might signify a shaman or a priest who could transform or travel between the human and spirit worlds. It suggests that a person's identity was tied not just to their social role, but also to their spiritual power. The repetition of these specific faces with supernatural elements reinforces the idea that these were particular individuals known for their unique spiritual abilities. They weren't just any shaman, they were asterisk. That asterisk shaman, the one with the jaguar eye. The process of identifying these individuals wasn't easy. It involved creating a detailed database of facial features. For each vessel, researchers would document things like the shape of the nose, the curve of the eyebrows, the presence of any scars, moles, or other distinguishing marks. Then, they would use a systematic comparison method to find matches. Think of it like modern facial recognition software, but done entirely by the human eye. They had to account for slight variations from different artists or different workshops, but the underlying facial structure and unique identifiers remained consistent. It was this rigorous, scientific approach that provided the undeniable evidence that these were portraits of the same people. So, why did the Moche do this? Why create so many portraits of the same few individuals? The answer likely lies in power, legacy, and ancestor veneration. For a ruler or a high priest, having their portrait widely distributed would have been a powerful form of propaganda. It would have made their face, and therefore their authority, familiar to people across the Moche territory. It was a way of saying, I am in charge. This is my domain. These vessels could have been given as gifts to regional leaders to solidify alliances, essentially sending a piece of the ruler themselves. Furthermore, these portraits may have played a crucial role in ancestor worship. After a great leader or priest died, their portrait vessel could have served as a conduit to their spirit. It was a way to keep their memory and their power alive. The Moche believed that ancestors continued to play an active role in the world of the living, and having a realistic effigy would have been essential for rituals aimed at communicating with them or seeking their guidance. The vessels weren't just memorials. They were active participants in the ongoing social and religious life of the community. They ensured that the faces of the great and powerful would never be forgotten, that their influence would extend far beyond their mortal lives. What's truly mind-blowing is that this discovery transforms how we see ancient art. The Moche weren't just creating beautiful objects. They were recording their history in the faces of their people. They were giving us a direct, personal look into their society. We are no longer looking at anonymous figures from a lost civilization. We are looking into the eyes of Longnose, the warrior priest. We are seeing the stern expression of a powerful ruler, the scarred face of a celebrated warrior. These clay vessels are a bridge across centuries, allowing us to meet the real people of the Moche world. It's a powerful reminder that behind the grand narratives of history, there are always individual human beings with their own stories, their own faces, and their own legacies. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time to meet the ancient people of Peru. It's discoveries like this that make history feel so alive. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the past. Let me know in the comments which ancient art you'd like to explore next. See you in the next video. Hello and welcome back to our series. Today, in Chapter 8, we're exploring the fascinating world of ancient power portraits. But with a twist. We're not looking at marble statues or grand frescoes, but at something far more intimate and widespread: pottery. Let's delve into portraits of power, warriors, lords, and priests. When we think of ancient art, we might imagine monumental structures or golden treasures. Yet, some of the most detailed records of life, status, and power come to us from humble clay. The surfaces of pots, bowls, and vases became canvases for telling stories, and more importantly, for reinforcing social hierarchies. These weren't just decorative items. They were a form of mass media for their time, communicating who was in charge, who held spiritual authority, and who defended the realm. Let's start with the warriors. On countless vessels, we see figures armed for battle. But look closer. These aren't generic soldiers. The artists took great care in depicting specific details. Notice the intricate patterns of facial paint. These weren't random designs. They were emblems of identity, much like the colors of a modern sports team or a national flag. A particular pattern might signify allegiance to a specific clan, a certain military order, or commemorate a victory in a famous battle. The paint told you who this person was and what they had achieved without a single word being written. Then, there are the weapons they carry: spears, clubs, shields, and atlatls, or spear throwers, are rendered with precision. The type of weapon, its ornamentation, and how it's held all convey meaning. A warrior holding a ceremonial axe might not be depicted in the heat of battle, but rather in a position of authority, a veteran leader whose fighting days are now a source of his political power. The pottery captures not just the act of war, but the status that comes from being a successful warrior. These images, circulated on pottery, would constantly remind people of the military might that underpinned the ruling class. It was a subtle but constant display of force. Moving up the social ladder, we encounter the lords and rulers. Their depictions are all about grandeur and divine connection. One of the most striking features is the headdress. Forget simple hats. We're talking about elaborate constructions of rare feathers, carved jade, and precious shells. A headdress made from the plumes of the quetzal bird, for example, was a symbol of immense wealth and power, as these birds were sacred and their feathers were a controlled commodity. The sheer size and complexity of a headdress on a ceramic pot immediately signaled the depicted individual as supreme rank. The clothing and jewelry of these rulers are just as revealing. They are often shown wearing heavy jade necklaces, intricate ear spools, and belts adorned with symbolic carvings. Each element was a piece of a visual language of power. A belt depicting a sky god, for instance, didn't just accessorize an outfit. It declared the ruler's divine right to rule, suggesting a direct line of communication with the gods. When people used these vessels in their daily lives or in ceremonies, they were interacting with these very potent symbols of political and religious authority. The message was clear. This lord is powerful, wealthy, and chosen by the gods. This brings us to the priests. In many ancient societies, political and religious power were inextricably linked. The line between a lord and a high priest was often blurry, and pottery reflects this. Priests are identifiable by their unique regalia and the ritual objects they hold. They might be shown with incense burners, ceremonial staffs, or instruments used for bloodletting rituals. These weren't scenes of everyday life. They were snapshots of sacred ceremonies that maintained cosmic order and secured the favor of the gods. Look at the symbols surrounding these priestly figures. You might see serpents, jaguars, or complex geometric patterns. Each symbol had a deep cosmological meaning. A jaguar, for instance, often represented night, the underworld, and shamanic power. A priest, depicted with jaguar motifs, was claiming the ability to traverse different spiritual realms. By painting these scenes on pottery, the elite were not just recording their rituals, they were broadcasting their spiritual authority. They were telling the populace that they alone held the keys to understanding the universe and communicating with the divine forces that controlled agriculture, weather, and life itself. So, how did this all function as political communication? Imagine you're living in an ancient city. You might not ever see the supreme ruler or the high priest in person, but you would see their images constantly. You would see them on the pottery used for feasts, on the vessels used for important ceremonies, and even on the cups you drink from. This constant visual reinforcement of the social order was incredibly effective. It normalized the power structure. The distribution of this pottery was also a political act. A ruler might gift finely painted vessels to a regional governor to secure their loyalty. These pots, bearing the ruler's image and symbols, would then be used and seen by the local population, extending the ruler's visual presence far beyond the capital city. When archaeologists find fragments of the same style of elite pottery in different far-flung sites, it's often evidence of a political or trade network, a sphere of influence bound together not just by treaties but by shared symbols of power. The artists who made these pots were highly skilled artisans, likely working in workshops attached to elite households. They weren't just decorators. They were propagandists, in a way. They had a deep understanding of the symbolic language of their culture and knew exactly how to compose an image to convey a specific message of power, lineage, and authority. The consistency of these depictions across a region suggests a centralized control of messaging, a true hallmark of a sophisticated political system. In essence, these ceramic vessels were far more than just containers. They were active agents in the political life of their societies. They were portable monuments, biographical documents, and tools of statecraft. They celebrated the power of the warrior, legitimized the authority of the lord, and broadcast the sacred knowledge of the priest. By studying these intricate portraits on pottery, we gain a unique, ground-level view of how ancient societies were built, maintained, and understood by the people who lived in them. The story of power was written not just in stone, but in clay. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter. I hope you found this look into the political life of pottery as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the past. We'll see you in the next chapter. Thanks for watching. Imagine holding a piece of the past in your hands. Not a king's crown or a warrior's sword, but something far more intimate, far more human. This is the gift of the Moche people, who thrived on the northern coast of Peru over 1,000 years ago. Long before the Inca Empire rose to prominence, the Moche were master craftspeople, and their most enduring legacy is their incredible pottery. These aren't just simple pots and pans. They are windows into a lost world, intricate sculptures that capture the vibrant tapestry of everyday life. Today, we're going to journey back in time, not to witness grand battles or royal decrees, but to explore the quiet, rhythmic, and deeply relatable moments of Moche existence, all preserved in clay. Let's start with the basics of survival, the very foundation of any society. Food. The Moche were brilliant engineers, creating vast irrigation canals to make the desert bloom. And their ceramics show us the fruits of their labor. We see figures tending to fields of maize, beans, and potatoes. You can almost feel the sun on their backs as they work the earth. Look closely at this vessel. It's shaped like a squash, so realistic you could almost pluck it from the vine. They didn't just depict the plants. They showed the people who grew them, their faces etched with the concentration of a farmer tending his crops. It's a powerful reminder that behind every meal, then and now, there's human effort and a deep connection to the land. Of course, farming wasn't their only source of sustenance. The Pacific Ocean was their backyard, and they were masters of the sea. Their pottery is teeming with scenes of maritime life. Fishermen are a common subject, often shown riding unique watercraft called cabalitos, chitotora, or little red horses. These one-man boats, made from bundled reeds, are still used by fishermen in Peru today. It's an incredible, unbroken link to the ancient past. On the ceramics, we see these fishermen casting their nets, hauling in their catch, their bodies taut with effort. The artists capture the dynamic energy of the moment, the splash of the waves, the glint of fish scales. We see depictions of crabs, sea lions, and all sorts of marine creatures, showing a profound knowledge and respect for the ocean's bounty. It wasn't just about food, it was a way of life, a dance to the tides that defined their coastal communities. Once the food was gathered, it was time to prepare it. Moche, kitchens, as seen on their pots, were hubs of activity. We find scenes of people grinding corn into flour, using stones just like those found in archaeological digs. We see women stirring large pots over a fire, perhaps making a hearty stew or brewing chicha, a fermented corn drink that was central to social and ceremonial life. These aren't just generic scenes. The detail is astonishing. You can see the texture of the grinding stones, the steam rising from the pots, the communal nature of the work. It feels so familiar. It's the same rhythm of chopping, stirring, and tasting that happens in our own kitchens today. These vessels tell us that sharing a meal, the preparation and the consumption, has always been a cornerstone of human community. But life wasn't all work. The Moche knew how to celebrate, how to create joy and art. Music was clearly a huge part of their world. We find countless depictions of musicians, their cheeks puffed as they play panpipes, or their hands striking a drum. You can almost hear the melodies echoing through the centuries. Some pots are even shaped like instruments themselves, or feature figures in lively dance poses, their bodies moving to a beat we can no longer hear but can vividly imagine. These scenes are bursting with energy and happiness. They remind us that the need for creative expression, for music and dance that lifts the spirit, is a universal human trait. It connects us across time, the shared joy of a good song or a lively celebration. Another fascinating aspect of Moche daily life captured in clay is the art of weaving. Textiles were incredibly important in Andean cultures, valued even more than gold or silver. They were used for clothing, for ceremonial purposes, and as a form of wealth. Moche, pottery shows us the weavers at their looms, their hands deftly passing the shuttle back and forth. The artists took care to show the intricate patterns being created, designs that often mirrored the symbols and figures found on the pottery itself. We see women spinning thread, teaching the craft to younger generations, their faces models of intense focus. It's a beautiful tribute to what was predominantly women's work, recognizing the immense skill and artistry involved. These ceramic scenes preserve the dignity and importance of a craft that would otherwise be lost to time, as ancient textiles rarely survive. Even the architecture and social structure of their lives are illustrated. We see detailed models of Moche homes, simple adobe structures with open courtyards, giving us a three-dimensional blueprint of their villages. We see people gathered, talking, perhaps sharing stories or settling disputes. There are figures who are clearly leaders or priests, identifiable by their elaborate headdresses and garments, but they are often shown interacting with common people. We also see mothers nursing their children, a timeless image of care and tenderness. Pottery showing a woman holding her baby, the gentle curve of her arm, the peaceful look on the infant's face. It's profoundly moving. It collapses the distance of centuries and speaks directly to our shared experience of family and love. The Moche artists didn't shy away from showing the full spectrum of life. They depicted illness and medicine as well. We see figures who are clearly suffering from ailments, and we see healers, or curanderos, attending to them. Some scenes show medicinal plants being administered, or even what appear to be surgical procedures. While some of these images can be unsettling, they are also incredibly human. They show a society grappling with mortality, with pain, and with the desire to heal and comfort one another. It's a raw and honest portrayal of the vulnerabilities we all share. It underscores that the quest for health and the instinct to care for the sick are fundamental parts of the human story. So why did the Moche put so much effort into documenting their daily lives on their pottery? Some scholars believe these scenes had a ritual or ceremonial purpose, perhaps meant to ensure a good harvest or a successful fishing trip. Others think they might have been educational tools, a way to pass down knowledge and cultural values from one generation to the next. And some might have simply been a celebration of their world, an artistic impulse to capture the beauty and rhythm of the life they knew. Perhaps it was a combination of all these things. Whatever the reason, the result is an unparalleled ethnographic record, a visual encyclopedia of a civilization. When we look at these ceramic vessels, we're doing more than just admiring ancient art. We are connecting with people. We're seeing their work, their celebrations, their families, their struggles. The Moche didn't leave us a written language, no grand histories carved in stone. Instead, they left us these intimate, personal stories shaped from clay. They show us that despite the vast differences in time, technology, and culture, the fundamental essence of human life remains remarkably constant. The satisfaction of a hard day's work, the joy of music, the comfort of family, the taste of a shared meal. These are the things that connected the Moche people, and these are the things that still connect us all today. Their art is a beautiful, powerful message sent across 1,000 years, reminding us of our shared humanity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the world of the Moche. If you found this fascinating, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more explorations into the art and history of our amazing world. See you next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of the Moche civilization. Today, we're venturing into the spiritual heart of their culture, exploring the gods, rituals, and sacred imagery that gave their world meaning. Much of what we know comes from their incredible pottery, which serves as a visual encyclopedia of their beliefs. So, grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's unravel the mysteries of Moche religion. At the very center of the Moche pantheon stands a formidable figure known as Ai Apek, which translates to the creator god, or, more chillingly, the decapitator. You can't miss him on Moche ceramics. He's often depicted with a fanged mouth, a wrinkled face, and sometimes wearing snake or jaguar-headed earrings. This powerful deity was seen as the primary creator, a protector of the Moche people, a provider of water and food, and a victor in battles. His dual nature is key. He creates and sustains life, but he also demands it. The decapitator aspect isn't just a scary name. It reflects his role in ritual combat and sacrifice, which the Moche believed were necessary to maintain cosmic balance and ensure agricultural fertility. When you see Ai Apek holding a ceremonial knife in one hand and a severed head in the other, you're looking at a profound statement about life, death, and regeneration in the Moche worldview. But Ai Apek didn't rule alone. The Moche spiritual world was teeming with a host of supernatural animals and beings, each with its own domain and power. The natural world wasn't just a backdrop for human life. It was alive with sacred forces. Jaguars, with their strength and nocturnal habits, were seen as powerful shamans, or alter egos, capable of moving between the earthly and spiritual realms. Eagles and owls, masters of the sky, represented the upper world and were associated with warriors and divine messengers. On tea-ground snakes, with their ability to shed their skin, symbolized renewal and the underworld. These weren't just animals. They were embodiments of divine attributes. Often Moche art combines features from different creatures, creating fantastic hybrids like a fanged jaguar with bird wings, blurring the lines between species to represent the fluid and interconnected nature of the cosmos. living on the arid coast of Peru. The Moche had a deep and respectful relationship with the Pacific Ocean. It was both a source of immense bounty and a place of great mystery. Consequently, their art is filled with ocean spirits and marine mythology. You'll find depictions of supernatural crabs with human faces, strumbus shell trumpeters announcing rituals, and beings that are part human, part sail lion. These entities governed the ocean's resources. Fishermen would have made offerings to them to ensure a good catch and a safe return. The ocean was seen as another world, a parallel realm to the land, and these spirits were its powerful guardians. The famous strumbus human hybrid, for instance, often appears in scenes of sacrifice, suggesting its important role in connecting the human world with the divine powers of the sea. Just as the ocean shaped life on the coast, the Andes Mountains loomed in the distance, holding immense spiritual significance. For the Moche, mountains, or Appas, were living beings, powerful deities that controlled weather, water sources, and the fertility of the land. They were the origin points of rivers, the lifeblood of Moche agriculture. On pottery, mountain beings are often depicted as anthropomorphic peaks with fanged mouths and fierce expressions. They might be shown presiding over rituals or interacting with other deities. These images remind us that the Moche landscape was sacred. Every mountain, every river, was imbued with spiritual power. Pilgrimages to mountain shrines and offerings made at their bases were crucial for appeasing these powerful earth gods and ensuring the continued flow of water to their desert communities. It was a constant negotiation with the powerful forces of nature. So, how did the Moche interact with these powerful gods and spirits? Their ceramics give us an incredible window into their ritual life. We see elaborate ceremonies, complex processions, and dramatic rites. One of the most depicted rituals is the sacrifice ceremony. These scenes show a narrative sequence. Elaborately dressed warriors engage in ritual combat. The loser is captured and then presented for sacrifice. The ceremony culminates with a priestess and a main lord, often identified as Ai Peak's earthly representative, collecting the victim's blood in a goblet. This blood was then offered to the gods, a powerful act believed to nourish them and guarantee the renewal of the world. It's a graphic reminder that, for the Moche, life and death were inextricably linked in a sacred cycle. Offerings were a constant part of Moche religious practice, and they weren't always so dramatic. Ceramics show people presenting all sorts of things to their deities. Food, coca leaves, and textiles were common offerings. Special pottery vessels were created specifically to be used in rituals and then left as offerings themselves. The burial of high status individuals, like the Lord of Sipán, provides stunning evidence of this. These tombs were filled with incredible offerings, gold and silver ornaments, hundreds of ceramic vessels, and even sacrificed retainers and animals, all intended to accompany the Lord into the next world and ensure his status among the ancestors. Ancestors themselves were considered sacred and were likely worshipped and consulted, bridging the gap between the living and the divine. Putting it all together, Moche religion was a complex and vibrant system deeply woven into the fabric of their daily lives. It wasn't just something practiced in temples. It was reflected in their art, their politics, and their relationship with the environment. Through the powerful imagery on their pottery, we see a world governed by creator gods like Apek, animated by supernatural animals, and defined by the sacred power of the ocean and mountains. The rituals of sacrifice and the constant practice of making offerings were how the Moche actively participated in the cosmic order, ensuring balance and the continuation of life in their challenging desert home. The legacy of their beliefs, preserved in clay for centuries, continues to give us a profound look into the soul of this remarkable ancient culture. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the Moche spiritual world. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into ancient civilizations. Let me know in the comments which Moche deity you find the most intriguing. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back to our exploration of the ancient world. Today, we're delving into a more somber and complex aspect of history, one that often surfaces when we study ancient civilizations: ritualized violence. It's a topic that can be unsettling, but by approaching it with respect and a desire for understanding, we can gain deeper insights into the beliefs and social structures of the past. A primary window into these practices isn't always grand stone monuments or written texts, but something far more common and intimate: pottery. Imagine a simple clay pot. To us, it's an artifact. To the people who made and used it, it was a canvas for storytelling, a record of their world. And on these ceramic surfaces, we find vivid, detailed scenes that bring a challenging part of their reality to life. These painted vessels are some of our most crucial pieces of evidence for understanding ritual combat, the treatment of captives, and the practice of human sacrifice. Unlike other historical records that might be biased or intended for a specific political purpose, these everyday objects can offer a more unvarnished glimpse into cultural practices. Let's start with ritual combat. Across various cultures, we see scenes painted on pottery that depict warriors engaged in one-on-one battles. But these aren't chaotic scenes of warfare. Instead, they are highly stylized and symbolic. The combatants are often elaborately dressed in ceremonial attire, complete with intricate headdresses, jewelry, and specific weaponry. The setting is frequently a designated arena or a ceremonial plaza, suggesting these were planned events, not spontaneous skirmishes. The artists took great care to illustrate the rules of engagement, the specific costumes, and the symbolic importance of the duel. These weren't just fights for territory. They were profound rituals, perhaps designed to appease gods, demonstrate power, or reenact mythological battles. The pottery shows us that the outcome was about more than just winning or losing. It was about fulfilling a sacred obligation. Following these ritual battles, we often see another type of scene depicted on the pottery: the parade of prisoners. The defeated warriors from the ritual combat are shown being led in a procession. They are stripped of their fine armor and regalia. Their humility is stark contrast to their earlier powerful appearance. They are often bound with ropes around their necks or hands and escorted by the victorious warriors. These scenes are not just about showing off the spoils of war. They are deeply ceremonial. The procession often moves towards a temple or a central pyramid, the heart of the ceremonial center. The pottery artists captured the gravity of these moments, the solemn march of the victors and the dignified, if somber, procession of the captives. It was a public display that reinforced the social order and the power of the ruling elite and the gods they served. This leads us to the most difficult aspect of our discussion: sacrifice. The pottery from many ceremonial centers provides some of the most direct, though graphic, evidence for this practice. The scenes often continue the narrative from the prisoner parade. We see the captives brought before a high priest or a ruler at the top of a temple pyramid. The depictions are incredibly detailed, showing the specific ritual tools used, the positions of the individuals involved, and the altar upon which the sacrifice would take place. While these images can be jarring, it's crucial to understand them within their cultural context. For these ancient peoples, sacrifice was not an act of wanton cruelty. It was seen as a vital necessity for maintaining cosmic balance, ensuring agricultural fertility, and repaying a debt to the gods who, in their cosmology, had sacrificed themselves to create the world. The blood offered was considered a sacred life force that nourished the deities and sustained the universe. The pottery illustrates these events as the ultimate religious act, the culmination of a long and complex series of rituals. What makes pottery such an invaluable source is its sheer abundance and its role in daily life. While monumental stone carvings might depict an idealized version of a ruler's power, pottery was used in homes, in burials, and in everyday rituals. The artists who decorated these vessels were often portraying scenes they may have witnessed or that were part of their shared cultural stories. The consistency of these themes across thousands of pottery fragments from different sites helps us build a more complete and nuanced picture. We see variations in style and detail, but the core narrative of ritual combat, procession, and sacrifice remains remarkably consistent in certain regions. This allows us to understand these practices not as isolated events, but as a deeply embedded and structured part of the society's religious and political life. It's also important to note what the pottery tells us about the participants. It wasn't just about anonymous victims. In many cases, the warriors, both victors and captives, are depicted with individualizing features or name glyphs. This suggests they were important members of society, likely from elite lineages. This wasn't a punishment for common criminals. It was a ritual involving high-status individuals, making the sacrifice even more significant. The honor was not just in winning the combat, but also, in a way, in being chosen for the ultimate sacred duty. The pottery humanizes these events, reminding us that these were real people participating in a belief system that, while alien to us, was profoundly meaningful to them. By calmly and respectfully analyzing these ceramic paintings, we move beyond simple shock or judgment. We begin to see a world where the lines between politics, religion, and warfare were completely blurred. Power was demonstrated not just through military might, but through the ability to stage these elaborate ceremonies and mediate with the divine. The ceremonial center, with its pyramids and plazas, was a grand stage, and the pottery acts as the script, preserving the scenes of the sacred drama that unfolded there. These clay vessels are a testament to the complexity of human belief, and the different ways cultures have sought to make sense of their place in the cosmos. They challenge us to look at the past on its own terms, and to appreciate the power of art, to preserve even the most difficult truths of human history. Thank you for joining me on this thoughtful exploration of a challenging subject. If you found this discussion valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into the ancient world. See you next time. Hello and welcome. Today, we're journeying back in time to the northern coast of Peru to explore a fascinating and often misunderstood aspect of the Moche civilization, which flourished from about 100 to 800 AD. We'll be looking at their so-called erotic pottery, but as we'll see, this label doesn't quite capture the full story. These artifacts offer a profound window into Moche beliefs about life, fertility, and the very structure of their cosmos. When we hear the term erotic pottery, our modern minds might jump to certain conclusions, but for the Moche, these depictions were likely far from just being about physical pleasure. They were deeply embedded in a rich tapestry of ritual, symbolism, and a worldview that connected human life with the cycles of nature and the divine. These weren't objects hidden away in private. They were part of a broader visual language found in tombs and ceremonial contexts, suggesting they held significant public and spiritual meaning. Let's start by looking at the vessels themselves. The Moche were master ceramicists. Their pottery is renowned for its realism and detailed narrative scenes. They created incredible stirrup-spout bottles, where a single handle splits into two spouts, forming an arch. This form is unique to Andean cultures and was a canvas for their most important stories. On these vessels, we see a wide range of activities from daily life, warfare, and ritual. The scenes of intimacy are just one part of this vast visual encyclopedia. What exactly do these vessels show? They depict a variety of intimate pairings and acts. We see heterosexual couples, but also same-sex pairings and solitary figures. However, a significant portion of these scenes are non-reproductive. This is a crucial clue. If the goal was simply to depict procreation, we would expect to see a very different set of images. Instead, the Moche seem to be focusing on the transfer of vital fluids and energies. In their worldview, fluids like semen were powerful life forces, not just for creating children, but for regenerating the world itself. Many scholars now believe these acts were part of complex ritual ceremonies. The scenes often feature individuals with skeletal features or supernatural attributes, suggesting a connection to the world of ancestors and deities. The act of intimacy, in this context, wasn't just a private moment between two people. It was a cosmic event, a way to channel energy between the world of the living and the spirit realm. It was about ensuring the continuation of life in its broadest sense. The fertility of the fields, the health of the community, and the favor of the gods. Consider the agricultural context. The Moche lived in a challenging desert environment, dependent on sophisticated irrigation systems to bring water from the mountains. Life was precarious. Fertility wasn't just about human babies. It was about the crops growing, the llamas multiplying, and the rivers flowing. The circulation of fluids in the human body was seen as a microcosm of the circulation of water in the landscape. Therefore, rituals involving the exchange of bodily fluids could be seen as a way to magically encourage or mirror the flow of life-giving water, ensuring a good harvest and the survival of their society. Another key theme is duality. Andean cosmology is built on the concept of complementary opposition. Day and night, sun and moon, male and female, life and death. These were not seen as warring forces, but as necessary counterparts that together created a balanced whole. Intimate acts where two distinct beings come together to create a unified moment of energy exchange, perfectly embody this principle. The pottery might be illustrating this fundamental concept of cosmic balance and creation. The union of two bodies could symbolize the union of different parts of the cosmos, maintaining order and harmony. We also see depictions that seem to have a pedagogical purpose, a way of passing down knowledge. Some vessels show mothers instructing their daughters, or perhaps priestesses instructing novices about the body. They depict anatomical details with a clarity that suggests a sophisticated understanding of human biology. This was not knowledge for its own sake. It was practical and sacred. Understanding the body was part of understanding one's place in the universe and how to maintain health and balance, both personally and communally. Let's address the skeletal figures more directly. Death in Moche culture was not an end, but a transition. Ancestors remained active participants in the world of the living. Seeing skeletal figures engaging in life-creating acts is a powerful statement. It suggests that the life force transcends the boundary between life and death. The ancestors, from their position in the other world, could still influence the fertility and well-being of their descendants. These rituals might have been a way to communicate with them, to enlist their help in ensuring the cycle of life continued. The fluids exchanged were perhaps offerings, a way of nourishing the ancestors who, in turn, would ensure the world of the living flourished. It's also important to remember who was buried with these objects. They are often found in the tombs of high status, individuals, rulers, priests, and priestesses. This suggests that the rituals depicted were likely performed by, or on behalf of, the elite. These leaders were seen as mediators between the human and divine worlds. By participating in or commissioning these acts, they were fulfilling their sacred duty to maintain cosmic order and ensure the prosperity of their people. The pottery served as a permanent record of these vital world-sustaining ceremonies. So, when we look at a Moche erotic vessel, we're not just seeing a depiction of a physical act. We are seeing a prayer, a story, a scientific diagram, and a cosmological map, all rolled into one. We are witnessing a culture that did not separate the sacred from the mundane, or the body from the spirit. For the Moche, intimacy was a powerful force that connected humans to each other, to their ancestors, and to the fundamental cycles of the universe. It was a key to unlocking and circulating the energies that made life possible. By moving past our modern assumptions, and looking at these objects through a more academic and culturally sensitive lens, we gain a much richer and more profound understanding of the Moche people. They show us a worldview where the human body is a site of immense power and sacred meaning, and where the most intimate acts are tied to the very survival of the cosmos. These vessels are a testament to their sophisticated understanding of the world and their place within it. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Moche culture. It is a reminder that human history is full of diverse and complex ways of understanding the world. If you found this interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more journeys into the past. See you next time. Have you ever wondered what secrets lie buried beneath our feet? For archaeologists, tombs are not just final resting places. They are time capsules, packed with clues about ancient lives, beliefs, and societies. Today, we're diving deep into the world of tomb discovery, exploring how ancient people protected their dead, what they left behind, and what these discoveries tell us about their vision of the afterlife. Imagine the thrill of an archaeological dig. After weeks, months, or even years of careful excavation, you hit something solid. It's not just a rock, it's a constructed wall. As you clear away the earth, you realize you found the entrance to a tomb, a space sealed away from the world for centuries, maybe even millennia. This is where the real adventure begins. These ancient tombs weren't just simple graves. Many cultures built elaborate structures to house their deceased, especially those of high status. Think of the Great Pyramids of Egypt, or the sprawling terracotta army of China's first emperor. But even on a smaller scale, tombs were designed to last and to protect. They were often buried deep underground, hidden in remote locations, or sealed with massive stone blocks to deter grave robbers. Sometimes, builders would even create false chambers and den passages to confuse anyone who dared to enter. The primary goal was to safeguard the body and the precious items buried with it, ensuring a safe journey to the next life. Once inside, what do we find? It's often a breathtaking scene. The arrangement of objects is rarely random. Everything is placed with purpose. Near the deceased, you might find personal items. Jewelry they wore, tools they used, or weapons they carried. Food and drink were common offerings, placed in ceramic vessels to sustain the spirit on its long journey. It's like they were packing a suitcase for the ultimate trip. One of the most fascinating types of artifacts found in these tombs are pottery portraits. These aren't just generic statues. They are incredibly detailed, lifelike representations of individuals. We're talking about unique facial features, hairstyles, and even expressions. In some cultures, like the Moche of ancient Peru, these portrait vessels were mass-produced, but each one captured a distinct personality. It as if you were looking into the face of someone who lived over 1,000 years ago. These portraits weren't just art. They were a way of preserving identity, ensuring that the person would be remembered and recognized in the afterlife. Some scholars believe they may have also been used in rituals before being buried, connecting the living with the dead. The sheer quantity and quality of objects in a tomb tell us a lot about the person's status. A simple grave with a few pottery pieces might belong to a common farmer, but a massive tomb filled with gold, exotic imported goods, intricate textiles, and numerous pottery portraits. That's a clear sign of royalty, or a very powerful noble. The amount of labor required to build the tomb and the wealth of the goods inside are direct indicators of social hierarchy. We can literally map out the structure of a society by comparing its burials. The most powerful individuals had the resources to command the grandest send-offs. But what about their beliefs? The objects in a tomb are a direct reflection of what a culture believed happened after death. If a society believed in a physical afterlife, similar to life on Earth, you'd find everything a person might need. Food, tools, weapons, and even servants, sometimes represented by small figures. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, for example, was a guidebook for the deceased, filled with spells and instructions to navigate the underworld. The presence of such texts shows a highly complex and structured belief system. Let's look at a specific example. The discovery of the tomb of the Lord of Sipán in Peru was a game. This Moche warrior priest was buried with an incredible array of treasures. Ornate headdresses, gold and turquoise jewelry, and hundreds of ceramic vessels. He was also buried with other people, guards and companions, believed to accompany him into the next world. His tomb was like a royal court, frozen in time. The objects weren't just for show. They represented his power and his role in both the living world and the one to come. The pottery portraits found there gave us a face to put to the name, a tangible connection to this powerful ancient leader. The process of excavating and analyzing these finds is incredibly delicate. Archaeologists work like detectives, documenting the exact location of every single object. This context is crucial. A pot found near the head might have a different meaning than one found at the feet. A broken object might signify a specific ritual, not just accidental damage. By piecing together this spatial information, we can reconstruct the burial ceremony itself. We can almost see the mourners placing the final gifts before the tomb was sealed forever. These discoveries also challenge our own perceptions of the past. It's easy to think of ancient people as primitive, but the complexity of their burial rites shows a profound understanding of symbolism, art, and engineering. They had deep emotional connections and a desire for immortality that we can still relate to today. The care they took in preparing for the afterlife reveals a fundamental human concern. What comes next? From the hidden entrances and protective measures to the deliberate arrangement of symbolic objects, tombs are a rich tapestry of information. They tell us about social status, with the rich and powerful taking their wealth with them. They reveal a deep-seated belief in an afterlife, a journey that required preparation and provisions. And through stunning artifacts like pottery portraits, they give us a personal, human connection to the past, allowing us to look into the eyes of people who lived and died thousands of years ago. Every tomb we uncover is another chapter in the grand story of humanity, a story of life, death, and the enduring hope for what lies beyond. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through history's greatest discoveries. Today, we travel to northern Peru. to a place where a discovery in the late 1980s completely rewrote our understanding of a lost civilization. This is the story of Sipan, and the magnificent lord who rested there for nearly 2 millennia. Our story begins in 1987, in the Lambiek Valley. Local police alerted archaeologist Walter Alva to a troubling situation. Looters, known as Huacaros, had been ransacking an ancient adobe pyramid at a site called Huacaro. They had already plundered one tomb, and priceless artifacts were flooding the black market. Alva knew he had to act fast. What he did unknow was that he was on the brink of one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century. As Alva and his team began their urgent excavation, they worked under the constant threat of armed looters. They had to secure the site and work around the clock. Just below the looted tomb, they made a breathtaking discovery. It was another burial, but this one was completely untouched, sealed for over 1,700 years. As they carefully cleared away the layers of earth, the sheer richness of the burial began to reveal itself. This was no ordinary individual. This was a royal tomb, the final resting place of a powerful Moche warrior. He would become known to the world as the Lord of Sipán. The Moche civilization had flourished on the arid coast of Peru from about 100 to 700 AD, long before the Inca, but much about their social structure remained a mystery. This tomb was about to provide the answers. The Lord of Sipán was laid to rest in a simple wooden coffin, but his adornments were anything but simple. He was covered from head to toe in gold, silver, and turquoise. He wore spectacular ear spools, intricate necklaces of gold and silver peanut-shaped beads, and a crescent-shaped headdress of beaten gold. In his hands, he held a golden scepter. These weren't just decorations. They were symbols of his immense power and divine status. The detail was astonishing. One of the most iconic artifacts was a back flap, a piece of armor worn on the lower back, depicting a fearsome deity holding a knife and a severed head. It was made from solid gold, a testament to the incredible skill of Moche. Everything pointed to a figure of supreme authority, a man who was both a political leader and a high priest. But the Lord of Sipán was not alone. His tomb was a microcosm of his court and his world. He was accompanied into the afterlife by 8 other individuals. To his sides lay 2 women, likely his wives or concubines. At his head and feet were 2 men, perhaps his loyal guards or lieutenants, one of whom had had his feet amputated, a symbolic gesture to ensure he would never desert his master, even in death. There was also a child, a dog, and 2 llamas, all meant to serve and accompany him in the next life. The sheer quantity of offerings was staggering. The tomb was packed with hundreds of ceramic vessels, many of which were masterpieces of Moche art. These weren't just simple pots. They were filled with food and drink for the afterlife. Among them were the famous Moche portrait head vessels. These are incredibly realistic ceramic sculptures of individuals, so detailed that you can see their unique facial expressions and features. They are like photographs in clay, giving us a direct, personal connection to the people of the past. The discovery of the Lord of Sipán was a game-changer. Before this, our knowledge of the Moche was largely based on their pottery and the iconography depicted on it. We saw scenes of elaborate ceremonies, warfare, and sacrifice, but we didn't know if these were myths or reality. The Lord of Sipán, dressed exactly like the figures in the Moche art, proved that these depictions were real. The warrior priests we saw on pottery were real people, and here was one of them, in the flesh, or at least in the bone. The excavation continued, and the team found even more tombs. They discovered the tomb of the old Lord of Sipán, an earlier ruler, and the tomb of the priest, another high-ranking individual. Each tomb added another layer to our understanding of Moche society, revealing a complex hierarchy and a rich, ceremonial life that revolved around warfare and ritual. The artifacts from Sipan tell a vivid story. They speak of a society that was highly organized, technologically advanced in metallurgy and ceramics, and deeply spiritual. The combination of gold, representing the sun and masculinity, and silver, representing the moon and femininity, shows a belief system centered on duality. The imagery of deities, warriors, and captives reveals a culture where power and religion were inextricably linked. The discovery also had a profound impact on Peru. It ignited a sense of national pride and brought global attention to the country's rich pre-Incan heritage. The artifacts were carefully conserved and are now housed in the magnificent royal tombs of Sipan Museum in Lambia, a museum built to resemble the very pyramid where they were found. It stands as a powerful statement against looting and a celebration of cultural patrimony. Walter Alva's race against time not only saved a priceless treasure but also unlocked the secrets of an entire civilization. The Lord of Sipán emerged from the darkness of his tomb to tell us his story, a story of power, ritual, and a world that was far more sophisticated than anyone had ever imagined. His discovery is a powerful reminder of how much of our human story still lies buried beneath the earth, waiting for its chance to be told. Thank you for joining us on this incredible archaeological adventure. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so many more stories to share with you. Until next time, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey through ancient artistry. Today, in Chapter 15, we're stepping into the quiet, dusty corners of pottery workshops, the sacred spaces where master craftspeople breathe life into clay. Imagine a bustling ancient city. Amidst the clamor of markets and daily life, there were special districts, enclaves dedicated entirely to craft. Archaeologists have unearthed these areas, revealing clusters of workshops where artisans lived and worked, side by side. These weren't just random artisans. They were specialists, masters of their trade. Scholars believe that many crafts, especially pottery, were often family traditions. Skills were passed down from parent to child, generation after generation, creating a living legacy of knowledge and technique. A young apprentice wouldn't just learn a job, they would inherit an identity. Let's peek inside one of these workshops. The air is thick with the earthy smell of wet clay and the faint, smoky scent from the kiln. Sunlight streams through an open doorway, illuminating particles of dust dancing in the air. The space is probably modest, perhaps part of the family home. Along the walls, you'd see shelves lined with tools, each one worn smooth by years of use. Simple, yet effective things. Wooden ribs for shaping, pointed sticks for incising delicate patterns, pieces of leather for smoothing surfaces, and natural sponges for adding or removing water. And of course, the heart of the workshop, the potter's wheel. In some cultures, it was a simple, hand-turned turnet, while in others, it was a more advanced kick wheel, allowing for greater speed and control. This wheel wasn't just a tool. It was a partner in creation, a spinning stage where lumps of earth were transformed into elegant forms. Scattered around the workshop, you'd find pots in all stages of creation. Some are freshly thrown, glistening and soft, waiting to be trimmed. Others are leather-hard, firm enough to be handled, carved, or have handles attached. And then there are the bone-dry pieces, pale and fragile, ready for the trial by fire. This whole process was a delicate dance with time and the elements. The potter had to understand the clay intimately, how it responded to touch, how quickly it dried in the day's heat, and how it would shrink and change in the kiln. This deep, intuitive knowledge was the hallmark of a true master. Now, let's talk about the unsung heroes of mass production in the ancient world. Molds. While a master potter might throw unique, high-status vessels on the wheel, everyday items, like oil lamps, small figurines, or decorative appliques, were often made using molds. These were typically made from fired clay themselves. A master artisan would first create a perfect original, a patrix. From this original, a two-part mold, the matrix, would be formed. Soft clay could then be pressed into each half of the mold. Once the two halves were joined and the clay had firmed up, the mold could be opened to reveal a nearly finished object. This technology was revolutionary. It allowed for the rapid production of standardized goods, making art and useful objects accessible to a much wider audience. It was the ancient equivalent of 3D printing, enabling workshops to meet popular demand and create consistent, recognizable styles. The final and most dramatic step in a pot's life was its journey through the kiln. The kiln was the fiery heart of the entire operation. These weren't just simple bonfires. Ancient kilns were sophisticated structures, often built from brick or stone and dug partially into the earth for insulation. There were different types, but a common design was the updraft kiln. It had a lower chamber, the firebox, where the fuel burned, and an upper chamber where the pots were carefully stacked. A perforated floor separated the two, allowing hot gases to rise and circulate around the pottery. Firing was a nerve-wracking process that could take days. The potter had to be a master of fire, slowly raising the temperature to drive out all the water without causing the pots to crack or explode. Then, they had to maintain a peak temperature, often over 900 degrees Celsius, to vitrify the clay, turning it into permanent, durable ceramic. The control of oxygen during firing was also a form of artistry. A firing rich in oxygen, an oxidizing atmosphere, would produce reddish or buff-colored wares, like the famous Roman terrace, but by restricting the oxygen supply, creating a reducing atmosphere, potters could achieve stunning black finishes, a technique perfected by the ancient Greeks for their iconic black figure and red figure vases. The opening of the kiln after it had cooled was a moment of truth. Had the firing been successful, the potter would peer inside, hoping to see rows of perfectly fired vessels, their colors vibrant, their forms intact. A successful firing meant profit and pride. A failed one meant lost time, fuel, and materials. It was a high-stakes gamble. Every single time. Now, let's focus on one of the most incredible aspects of this craft. Teaching the next generation. How did a young apprentice learn? Not just the mechanics of pottery, but the art of it. How did they learn to sculpt a human face that seemed to live and breathe? A face filled with emotional truth. It began with observation. An apprentice would spend years just watching the master. They would perform menial tasks, wedging clay to remove air bubbles, carrying water, stacking the kiln, and sweeping the floors. Every task, however humble, was a lesson. They were absorbing the rhythm of the workshop, learning the feel of the materials through their hands. The master would guide them, but often with actions rather than words. A slight adjustment of the apprentice's hand on the wheel, a demonstration of how to pull a handle, a quiet correction on the curve of a pot's belly. To learn the human form, apprentices often started with the basics. They might be given lumps of clay and told to sculpt individual features over and over. A nose, an eye, a mouth. They would learn the underlying anatomy, the way a smile creases the cheeks or how sorrow pulls at the corners of the mouth. They would likely copy existing works, perhaps from master molds or finished pieces, to understand the established conventions of style. But the real breakthrough came when they moved beyond mere imitation. The master would encourage them to observe life, to study the faces of people in the market, to capture the fleeting expressions of joy, anger, or contemplation. They learned that a true portrait wasn't just about anatomical accuracy. It was about capturing a moment, a personality, a story, a slight tilt of the head, a furrow in the brow. The subtle curve of a lip. These were the details that transformed a clay effigy into a window to the human soul. This transmission of knowledge was intimate and profound. It was a mentorship that shaped not just a potter but an artiste, ensuring that the fire of creativity, much like the fire in the kiln, was never allowed to go out. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the potter's world. It's truly amazing to think about the skill, patience, and artistry that went into every single piece that has survived the centuries. If you enjoyed this exploration, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters from history. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to our series on the ancient Moche civilization of Peru. Today, we'll be diving into chapter 16 to explore the fascinating world of Moche trade and how it created distinct regional styles, especially in their incredible pottery. If you've ever looked at Moche art, you might think it's all one and the same, but look closer and you'll find a tale of two regions, the North and the South. Let's set the stage. The Moche civilization wasn't a single, unified empire in the way we might think of the Romans or the Inca. Instead, it was a collection of politically independent or semi-independent polities, each centered in the river valleys that cut across the coastal desert of northern Peru. Imagine a string of pearls along the coast, each valley a pearl, connected by trade, religion, and shared culture. but each with its own local flavor. Archaeologists generally divide the Moche world into two major spheres of influence. The southern Moche territory stretched from the Chicama Valley down to the Warmi Valley. This region is often considered the Moche heartland, home to the massive Huaca del Moche, site the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. This was a major political and religious center, and its influence is crystal clear in the art. To the north, you have the northern Moche, spanning from the Jequitapi Valley up to the Piura Valley. This region had its own major centers, like Sipan, famous for its unlooted royal tombs on Pampa Grande. For a long time, the north was seen as a kind of provincial backwater compared to the south. But incredible discoveries, especially at Sipan, completely changed that view, showing us that the north was just as wealthy, complex, and powerful. So, how do we know they were different? The most obvious evidence is in their ceramics. Moche potters were absolute masters of their craft. They created everything from simple cooking pots to stunningly realistic portrait vessels and complex narrative scenes painted on fine-lined stirrup-spout bottles. It's in these high-status, artistic ceramics that the regional differences really shine. Let's start with color. Southern Moche pottery is famous for its bichrome palette. You typically see a rich, deep red pigment painted onto a creamy white or pale orange slip background. It's a very high contrast, visually striking style. It's clean, precise, and a hallmark of the southern Moche aesthetic. Now, head north. While they also used the red-on-cream theme, northern Moche potters got a little more They were more likely to use a wider range of colors and techniques. For example, you might see black lines added for detail or even some orange and brown shades. The north is particularly known for a technique where they would use a cream slip not just for the background, but also to paint designs on a red-slipped vessel, a kind of reverse of the southern style. It's a subtle difference, but it's consistent. Next, let's talk about shape. The quintessential Moche vessel is the stirrup-spout bottle. It's a globular or sculptural chamber with two spouts that curve up and join into a single, central spout. It's an iconic form that had been used in the Andes for centuries before the Moche, but they perfected it. In the suit, these stirrup spouts tend to be quite robust and thick. The arch is often a smooth, solid curve. In the north, however, the stirrup spouts often become taller, thinner, and more delicate, almost attenuated. They have a certain elegance and verticality that you don't see as often in the south. The overall proportions of the vessels can differ too. Northern potters sometimes favored more squat, globular vessel bodies, while some southern forms were more lenticular or lens-shaped. But the most exciting differences are in the themes to stories they chose to tell on their pots. Southern Moche fine-line pottery is famous for its complex narrative scenes. The most well-known is the sacrifice ceremony or presentation theme. This scene, repeated with slight variations on dozens of pots, shows a warrior priest receiving a goblet of blood from a bird-headed figure, surrounded by other supernatural attendants. It's a core myth, a religious drama played out across the surface of the vessel. Other popular themes include depictions of combat, deer hunts, and mythical creatures in marine environments. The South seems very focused on a specific set of standardized, religious narratives. The North tells some of those stories too, but they also have their own unique repertoire. Northern artists seemed more interested in depicting the lives and rituals of the elite. The art of Sipan, for instance, is filled with portraits of specific lords and priests in their full regalia. You see scenes of tomb presentations, where nobles are shown with the very grave goods they were buried with. There's a focus on personality, on individual power and status, that feels more pronounced than in the South. They also had their own unique myths. For example, scenes involving a crabman deity or certain spider-themed supernaturals are much more common in the North. So we have these two distinct styles. The South, classic, high contrast, focused on a core set of myths. The North, more varied in color, with elegant forms and a focus on the real-world rituals of its lords. This begs the question, why? Why did these differences exist? And what do they tell us about the Moche world? This is where trade and interaction come in. The valleys weren't isolated. People, goods, and ideas were constantly moving between them. We have evidence of long-distance trade. The Moche used spondylus shells from the warm waters of Ecuador, lapis lazuli from as far away as Chile, and exotic bird feathers from the Amazon rainforest. This trade wasn't just for pretty objects. It was a way of acquiring ritually powerful materials. Ideas traveled along these same routes. A potter from the Chicama Valley might see a vessel made in the Jequitipi Valley and be inspired by its form or a particular motif. But it wasn't a simple case of copying. When an idea or a style moved from one region to another, it was adapted and transformed to fit local tastes and beliefs. Think of it like this. The core Moche religion, with its gods and major rituals like the sacrifice ceremony, was probably understood across the entire Moche world. It was the cultural glue that held them together. This is why you see the same basic themes in both the North and the South. However, the way they chose to depict those themes, the emphasis they placed on certain figures, and the local myths they wove in vats, where regional identity came into play. A lord in the South might commission a pot showing the sacrifice ceremony to emphasize his connection to this foundational myth and the cosmic order. A lord in the North, like the Lord of Sipán, might commission a pot showing himself presiding over a ceremony, emphasizing his personal power and his direct role as a divine intermediary. It's the same religious system, but the artistic expression is tailored to different political strategies and local audiences. Archaeologists have even found workshops where pottery was made, and we can see that some workshops specialized in certain themes. There's also evidence of hybrid pots that show a mix of northern and southern traits. Perhaps these were made in border zones, or maybe they were created by potters who had traveled, or even for patrons who wanted something a little different. These hybrid pieces are fascinating because they are the physical evidence of cultural exchange. This model of regional styles helps us understand the Moche political landscape. The artistic differences support the idea of a confederation of powerful regional centers, rather than a single, monolithic empire ruled from one capital. The Lords of Sipán in the north were taking orders from the priests at the Huacas de Moche in the south. They were peers, and sometimes rivals, participating in a shared cultural and religious system, but expressing their power and identity in their own unique ways. The story of Moche pottery styles is a perfect example of how art can be a window into the complexities of an ancient society. It shows us how a shared culture can still have vibrant local traditions, and how ideas can spread and change as they move through a network of interacting communities. It's not just about red pots and cream pots. It's about politics, religion, identity, and the dynamic flow of ideas across the ancient Peruvian desert. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Moche art. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters from the ancient world. Let me know in the comments which Moche style, North or South, is your favorite. See you next time. Have you ever wondered what a face from 1,000 years ago really looked like? Not a king or a queen, but just an ordinary person. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the Moche people of ancient Peru and their incredible portrait pottery. These aren't just generic faces. They are startlingly realistic depictions of real individuals. So, what can these clay portraits tell us about identity, status, and life in a civilization without a written language? Let's find out. Welcome to Chapter 17 of Or Serie. We're exploring the Moche civilization, which flourished on the northern coast of Peru from about 100 to 800 AD. They were master artists, and among their most famous creations are the portrait head vessels. These ceramic pots are shaped like human heads, capturing unique facial features, expressions, and even what appear to be specific physical conditions or scars, with astonishing detail. Looking at them, you feel like you're meeting someone from the distant past. It's an incredibly personal connection across time. So, the first big question is, who were these people Huerte gods, kings, or someone else? Entirely. The level of realism suggests these were actual individuals. Archaeologists believe they were likely prominent members of Moche society, elite warriors, respected priests, powerful rulers, or esteemed artisans. Think of it like this. In a society without photography, having your likeness captured in such a permanent and skillful way was a huge honor. It was a statement of importance, a way to solidify your place in the community's memory. This brings us to a really interesting idea about Moche. In our modern world, we often think of identity as something internal, our thoughts, our feelings. But for the Moche, it seems identity was deeply intertwined with one's social role and physical appearance. Your face, your adornments, the paint on your skin, these weren't just superficial details. They were a public declaration of who you were, what you did, and where you belonged in the social hierarchy. Let's look closer at the details. Many portraits show individuals wearing elaborate headdresses, large ear spools, and intricate nose ornaments. These weren't just fashion accessories. They were symbols of power and status. The more elaborate your gear, the higher your rank. A portrait of a man with a jaguar-themed headdress, for example, might identify him as a powerful warrior or a leader of a specific clan. The pottery acted as a visual resume, instantly communicating a person's achievements and authority to anyone who saw it. But it's not just about the rich and powerful. Some portraits depict individuals with physical differences, like a missing eye, facial paralysis, or scars. These weren't hidden or idealized. Instead, they were rendered with the same care and realism as any other feature. This suggests that these physical traits were a significant part of their identity. Perhaps a scar was a mark of a veteran warrior, a badge of honor earned in battle, or maybe a specific physical condition was associated with a special spiritual power or a unique role in society. Rather than being seen as flaws, these features were integral to who they were. This connects to another fascinating aspect: the link between physical appearance and social status. The Moche believed that your outer self reflected your inner worth and your place in the cosmos. Your body was a canvas that displayed your life story: a skilled warrior's strong physique, a priest's ceremonial paint, or a ruler's imposing jewelry. All of these were visual markers that reinforced the social order. The portrait pots, then, were not just art. They were social documents, preserving the faces and statuses of key individuals for posterity. Now, let's consider why so many of these were made. We don't find just one pot of a particular person. We often find dozens, even hundreds of molds used to create copies. Why mass produce a specific individual's portrait? One leading theory is ancestral veneration. Imagine a powerful leader passes away. His family and followers might want to keep his presence alive. By creating and distributing his portrait vessel, they could continue to honor him, seek his guidance, and reinforce their own lineage and authority. These vessels might have been used in important rituals. Perhaps they were filled with chicha, a ceremonial corn beer, and used in toasts to the ancestor. Or maybe they were placed in tombs as offerings, to accompany the deceased into the afterlife and connect them with their esteemed predecessors. In this way, the portraits weren't just memorials. They were active participants in the ongoing social and religious life of the community. They were a bridge between the living and the dead, the past and the present. Think about the impact of seeing these faces everywhere. In a world without widespread writing, visual communication was everything. Seeing the face of a revered ancestor or a powerful leader repeated on pottery would constantly reinforce the stories, values, and power structures of Moche society. It was a form of propaganda, but also a form of collective memory, ensuring that the key figures of the community would never be forgotten. The creation process itself was remarkable. A master artist would first sculpt a highly detailed clay original. From this original, a mold would be made. This mold could then be used to press out multiple identical heads, which would then be customized with different paint firing techniques or small additions before being attached to a vessel body, often with a stirrup spout handle, a classic Moche design. This combination of mass production and individual customization is fascinating. It allowed for the wide distribution of a single identity, while still allowing for artistic variation. So, what did these incredible objects ultimately tell us? They reveal a society where identity was public, performative, and permanently etched onto the physical body. They show us that status was communicated not through words, but through visual symbols worn and displayed for all to see. And they suggest a deep connection to ancestors, whose likenesses were preserved and venerated, maintaining their power long after they were gone. The Moche portrait pots are more than just ancient art. They are windows into the minds of the Moche people, offering a profound glimpse into how they understood themselves and their world. They remind us that there are many ways to define a person, and that a face can truly tell 1,000 words, even without a single one written down. It's a powerful lesson in how art can preserve identity across centuries. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the world of the Moche. What do you think these portraits represent? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this exploration, please give this video a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the past. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome back to our journey through ancient civilizations. Today, we're diving into the dramatic final chapter of a fascinating culture, the decline of the Moche. For nearly 8 centuries, the Moche thrived on the arid coast of northern Peru, building massive pyramids, creating stunning art, and developing complex irrigation systems. But like all great powers, their time eventually came to an end. So, what happened? Let's unravel the mystery. One of the primary culprits behind the Moche collapse was a series of extreme environmental disasters. Imagine living in a desert where your entire existence depends on a delicate balance of water. Now, picture that balance being shattered. Around the 6th century AD, the Moche world was hit by a double whammy of climatic catastrophes, linked to the El Niño Southern Oscillation. First came the mega El Niño events. These weren't your typical weather patterns. We're talking about torrential, biblical-scale floods that lasted for weeks. Archaeological evidence shows thick layers of flood sediment burying entire Moche sites. These floods would have been catastrophic. They would have destroyed their sophisticated irrigation canals, the very lifelines that turned the desert green. Homes made of adobe mud bricks would have literally dissolved in the relentless rain. The floods would have also washed away precious topsoil, making agriculture impossible for years to come. Imagine the psychological impact. The gods who were supposed to ensure stability and fertility had seemingly unleashed chaos, but the climate's fury didn't stop there. Following the devastating floods, a prolonged and severe drought gripped the region. Some studies suggest this drought could have lasted for 30 years or more. The rivers that were once raging torrents slowed to a trickle. The fields that had been washed away were now baked and cracked under a relentless sun. The Moche, who had mastered water management, found themselves powerless against a climate that had turned hostile. With their agricultural base crippled, first by flood and then by drought, widespread famine was inevitable. The very foundation of their society began to crumble. This environmental crisis triggered a profound crisis of faith. The Moche elite, the lords and priests, derived their power from their perceived ability to mediate with the gods and ensure the world's stability. Their elaborate ceremonies and human sacrifices were all meant to appease these powerful deities and guarantee agricultural prosperity. But when the floods came and the rain stopped, the rituals failed. The gods seemed to have abandoned them. The authority of the ruling class was shattered. How could you trust a leader who couldn't even make it rain? This loss of faith led directly to political fragmentation. The centralized power that had once unified the Moche valleys began to fracture. People started to question the system. We see evidence of this in the archaeological record. The grand, centrally located ceremonial centers began to lose their importance. Instead, new, smaller, and more fortified settlements started popping up in defensive locations, higher up in the valleys. This suggests a breakdown of order and an increase in internal conflict. Local warlords likely vied for control over dwindling resources, like water and fertile land. The Moche world wasn't conquered by an outside force. It appears to have imploded from within, turning on itself in a desperate struggle for survival. As society unraveled, the Moche's famous artistic traditions also underwent a significant transformation. Moche Pottery is like a window into their world, renowned for its realism and intricate storytelling. In their prime, they created stunning portrait vessels and detailed scenes of rituals, myths, and daily life. But as their civilization declined, their pottery style changed dramatically. The fine, realistic craftsmanship began to disappear. It was replaced by a new style, often called Moche 5, which was much more abstract and geometric. The focus shifted away from depicting the world as it was, towards more stylized and schematic designs. Many of the old iconographic themes, like the elaborate sacrifice ceremony, were abandoned. The new pottery was often mass-produced and less carefully made. This shift reflects the turmoil of the times. The old worldview, the old certainties, were gone. The art no longer celebrated the power of the lords or the order of the cosmos. Instead, it seems to reflect a society in chaos, a culture losing its identity. Some archaeologists even see influences from neighboring highland cultures, like the Wari, in this later pottery, suggesting that as the Moche state weakened, new ideas and possibly new people began to move into the region. So, the fall of the Moche wasn't a single event, but a slow, painful process driven by a perfect storm of factors. Severe climate change destroyed their agricultural base. This led to a crisis of faith that undermined the authority of the rulers. The political structure then fragmented, leading to internal warfare and social breakdown. And finally, their art, the very expression of their culture, transformed to reflect this new, uncertain reality. By around 850 AD, the classic Moche culture had effectively vanished. They weren't wiped out completely. Of course, the people themselves survived, adapting to the new circumstances. Their descendants would eventually become part of new cultural formations, like the Chima Kingdom, which would rise from the ashes of the Moche world centuries later. The story of the Moche is a powerful reminder of how fragile civilizations can be, and how profoundly they are tied to the environment they inhabit. It's a cautionary tale from the ancient past that still resonates with us today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of the Moche decline. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into ancient history. Let me know in the comments which civilization you'd like to see us cover next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're journeying to modern Peru to explore a truly fascinating story. The enduring legacy of the Moche civilization, told through their incredible pottery. It's a story of art, identity, and a deep connection to a past that's still very much alive. So, who were the Moche? They were a pre-Inca culture that flourished on the northern coast of Peru from about 100 to 800 AD. While they left no written language, they left something just as powerful: their ceramic art. This wasn't just pottery. It was their encyclopedia, their history book, and their social media feed, all rolled into one. Through intricate designs and stunningly realistic portraits, they documented everything: their rulers, their warriors, their gods, their daily rituals, and the rich biodiversity of their world. But what happens when a civilization vanishes? Does its art just become a collection of dusty relics? Not for the Moche. In Peru today, their legacy is a vibrant, living force, and a huge part of that is thanks to the dedicated work of museums, scholars, and modern artists. Let's start with the guardians of this legacy. The museums, places like the Larco Museum in Lima and the Royal Tombs of Sipan Museum, are not just buildings with old pots. They are temples of cultural memory. The Larco Museum, for example, holds an astonishing collection of over 45,000 Moche ceramics. Walking through its halls is like stepping back in time. You see the famous portrait vessels, each one a unique individual with distinct facial features and expressions. Scholars believe these aren't just generic faces. They are actual portraits of Moche leaders, shamans, and nobles. It's like looking into the eyes of someone who lived over 1,000 years ago. The work these museums do is crucial. It's not just about displaying artifacts. It involves painstaking restoration. Many of these pieces are unearthed in fragments after centuries underground. Expert conservators, using a combination of scientific analysis and artistic skill, carefully clean, stabilize, and reassemble them. It's a delicate puzzle where every piece tells part of a story. They might use special adhesives that are reversible, meaning future generations with better technology can redo the work if needed. This process doesn't just fix a broken pot. It resurrects a piece of history, allowing us to see it as the Moche artist intended. And what a sight it is. The level of detail is mind-blowing. You have scenes of epic battles, elaborate ceremonies with priests and jaguar headdresses, and even depictions of medical procedures. There are ceramics showing farmers tending their crops, fishermen casting their nets, and weavers at their looms. You see animals unique to the region, like deer, pumas, and sea lions, all rendered with incredible realism. This is what makes Moche art so special. It's a window directly into their worldview, unfiltered by a written language. But the story doesn't end in the museum. The spirit of the Moche is being carried forward by a new generation of Peruvian artists. They are not simply copying the old designs. They are reinterpreting them, breathing new life into ancient forms. In towns like Chulucanas, a region famous for its pottery. You can find artisans who use techniques passed down through generations, techniques that have echoes of Moche craftsmanship. They might use similar firing methods or hand burnishing to achieve that characteristic smooth, dark finish. These modern artists draw inspiration from Moche iconography, but they infuse it with their own contemporary experiences. A modern potter might create a vessel that uses the classic Moche stirrup spout shape but decorates it with scenes that reflect modern Peruvian life or social commentary. It's a dialogue with the past. They are saying, we are still here. This tradition is ours, and it continues to evolve. This artistic revival helps keep the culture dynamic and relevant for today's world. It connects young Peruvians to their heritage in a way that feels personal and creative, not just academic. So, what does all this mean for Peruvian cultural identity today? It's immense. The Moche artifacts are more than just art. They are symbols of a rich, pre-colonial history. For a long time, the narrative of Peru was dominated by the Inca and the Spanish conquest. The rediscovery and celebration of the Moche and other pre-Inca cultures have helped create a more complex and complete picture of the nation as past. These ceramics are a source of immense national pride. They prove that sophisticated, artistic, and complex societies thrived in this land long before Europeans arrived. When Peruvians look at a Moche portrait vessel, they see the face of an ancestor. They see resilience, creativity, and a connection to the land that has endured for millennia. This connection strengthens the national identity, grounding it in a deep, indigenous history that is uniquely Peruvian. Scholars continued to unravel the mysteries of the Moche through these ceramics. By studying the iconography, they can reconstruct political structures, religious beliefs, and trade networks. For example, the recurring image of a powerful deity, often called Ai Apic or the Decapitator, tells us about their beliefs surrounding sacrifice, power, and agricultural fertility. Each new discovery, each newly interpreted scene, adds another layer to our understanding. In a way, the Moche never truly left. Their stories, captured in clay, have survived earthquakes, conquests, and the passage of centuries, thanks to the tireless efforts of conservators, the vision of scholars, and the passion of modern artists. The Moche legacy is not just being preserved, it's being celebrated and reborn. It's a powerful reminder that our past is always with us, shaping who we are and inspiring who we can become. It shows that art is one of the most powerful forms of human expression, capable of transcending time to speak to us across the ages. The legacy of Moche pottery is a testament to the enduring power of culture and the unbreakable spirit of the Peruvian people. Thank you so much for joining me on this cultural deep dive. I hope it gave you a new appreciation for the incredible history of Peru. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the art and history that shape our world. See you next time. We've journeyed through time, across lands of sun and shadow, guided by faces molded from clay 1,500 years ago. And now we find ourselves at the end of our story, asking a quiet yet profound question. Why do they still feel so alive? Why, after a millennium and a half, do these portraits of men, women, and children from a world so distant still speak to us with such clarity? It's a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, captured in the simplest of materials. The artists who shaped this clay were not just recording features. They were capturing souls. They saw the flicker of mischief in a child's eyes, the quiet dignity in an elder's gaze, the subtle curve of a smile that holds 1,000 untold stories. They weren't creating icons or gods. They were sculpting their neighbors, their family, their community. They were sculpting humanity itself. Look closely at this face. See the way the brow is furrowed, who's slightly in concentration, or perhaps mild worry. It's a look you've seen on a friend's face, on a stranger's in a coffee shop, maybe even in your own reflection. Or this one, a woman whose lips are parted as if she's about to speak, to share a secret or a piece of wisdom. What was on her mind in that fleeting moment? What were her hopes, her fears, her dreams? We will never know the specifics, but we don't need to. The emotion is universal. It transcends language, culture, and the vast expanse of centuries. These are not just artifacts. They are time capsules of feeling. The clay is hardened, the pigments may have faded, but the life force within them remains stubbornly, beautifully present. They are a bridge, connecting our modern hands to the hands that shaped them, our modern eyes to the eyes that once saw them as living, breathing people. When we look at them, we are not just observing history. We are participating in a conversation that has spanned generations. We are feeling the pulse of an ancient world, not as a collection of facts and dates, but as a tapestry of individual lives, each one as complex and vibrant as our own. Think about the world they inhabited, a world without electricity, without the internet, a world where the rising and setting of the sun dictated the rhythm of life. And yet, the core of their experience was so much like ours. They loved, they grieved, they worked, they played. They worried about their children, and they looked to the future with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. This shared emotional landscape is what makes these portraits so powerful. They remind us that for all our technological advancements and societal changes, the fundamental essence of what it means to be human has remained remarkably constant. We often think of the ancient world as something remote, something monumental and impersonal, a world of great empires, epic battles, and stoic ruins. But these portraits offer us a different perspective. They give us intimacy. They scale down the grandeur of history to the relatable, human level. They invite us to step away from the timeline of kings and conquests and into the quiet moments of everyday existence. Through these clay faces, we can almost hear the murmur of a forgotten language, smell the scent of wood smoke in the air, and feel the warmth of a community gathered together. It is an incredible gift they have left us. In a world that often feels fast-paced and disconnected, these portraits are an anchor. They ground us in our shared humanity. They show us that the emotions we feel today, joy, sorrow, curiosity, love, are the same emotions that animated the faces of our ancestors 1,500 years ago. They are a quiet rebellion against the notion that time erases everything. It doesn't. The spirit, the expression, the spark of life, these things can be captured, preserved, and passed down through the ages. As we conclude our journey, let these faces be the last thing you see tonight. Let them be a gentle reminder of the deep, unbroken chain of human experience to which we all belong. We are separated by time, but united by feeling. The people you've met tonight are gone, their names lost to the wind, their world turned to dust, but they are not forgotten, because in every line, every curve, every subtle expression of these clay portraits, they live on. They are still here, speaking to us across the centuries, sharing their silent stories. Allow their quiet presence to accompany you as you drift off. There is no need for further analysis, no more facts to absorb. There is only the gentle, peaceful connection with those who came before. Let their calm and their dignity settle over you. Feel the continuity of life, the thread that connects their world to ours. It's a story of resilience, a story of connection, a story of the timeless human heart. As you close your eyes, may you feel the quiet reassurance that comes from knowing you are part of this immense, beautiful, and unending human family. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Sleep well.